Hello, my fellow Westorians. Welcome back to Welcome back to History of Westeros. It's our Saturday live streams. We are establishing the last Saturday of the month as our Saturday target for each month. You might say, but Aziz, it's not the last Saturday of the month. And you're correct. It is not.
We don't always hit our targets.
Yeah, sometimes we miss by a whole week. No, actually, I'll be in New York next week for the Intelligent Speech Conference in Chelsea, so...
I'll be there for the Dumb Speech Conference.
So please, if you're going to be in the New York area, come to the Intelligent Speech Conference. Say hello. There's lots of other cool podcasters there. But that's not the topic of today's podcast. We're talking about a lot of fun stuff. And usually like I said, we're going to have this be on the last Saturday of the month. It'll always be at 2 o'clock. Whether it's actually the last Saturday or not.
Whether it's actually 2 o'clock or not.
That's right, because actually I think we started about 2:05 or 2:06, so, that's technically speaking, we did not start at 2. Now, it's funny because when we got news of this prequel show, which first started popping up about a year ago, we did an episode dedicated to the Age of Heroes, and it's been almost exactly a year. I wasn't sure how long ago we did that episode, and then I looked it up. I was like, it was about a year and about 2 weeks.
It was 2017 when Martin made his post about potential
right, and it was
successor series.
You're totally right. That's when it was mentioned that there'd be 4 or 5 or something like that. And this was the one that emerged from that haze to be the first. And since then, we talk a lot about the Age of Heroes from that perspective, just guessing what they might do. Since then, there's been a lot more narrowing down of what the show's intent is. There's been casting, there's been production news, there's been a lot. There's still quite a lot we don't know, and surely there'll be quite a bit more coming out. But it's safe to say that after this year or more, you want to call it a year, even more than a year since George first made this announcement, quite a lot has changed. We know a lot of things, so that's going to be a major focus today. We were also going to talk about a few other things. We're going to talk a little bit about Con of Thrones. We're going to talk a little bit about the Game of Thrones documentary by Jeannie Finley that a lot of us watched and enjoyed. And that's going to be about it, besides questions y'all have and a little bit of banter here. We had a little bit of a misfire last night, huh, Sean? You were trying to do something visually pleasing for the audience. Someone remembered that you had made a promise a while back that we forgot about.
Yeah, Sean.
I remembered.
Okay, yeah, Sean said when we hit 2,000 live viewers, which he didn't think would happen for quite a while, he would dye his beard pink. And I was telling him that, he doesn't have to dye the full thing pink. He has some gray in his beard, and some of it would show up right there. Then it wouldn't all be pink. But unfortunately, I was not here last night, and he went ahead without me, which I was glad for. But as you can see, it's not very pink. I can personally see a tiny bit of a tone to it, though. But we're going to do it better.
You should have seen it last night. First of all, I'll tell you, the dye said pink, but when I put it in, it looked purple. It was purple. I mean, like on my fingers, it was purple, and it looked almost maroon.
Yeah,
but it was
often the case.
You could see it clear, like my whole beard, not just like a little bit here. My beard was purple. My mustache, I had it on my ears, and my fingers, and my shirt. It was a mess.
You should have taken a picture.
I know. One, my hands were kind of messy, and 2, it was so rich. I just didn't believe that it wasn't going to stick. I assumed when I rinsed it out that it might fade a little or turn pink instead of purple. But it just all came. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Just completely all came out.
Your beard just refuses to change. It's in a way, it's very manly of that beard to refuse any alterations whatsoever. It's also true that the last time he tried to take a scissor to it, the scissors broke.
Yeah.
They just snapped in half.
Broken scissors all over the house.
Yeah, we've had a lot of barbers quit in frustration. They moved to other cities and...
Scissors actually work, but razors don't work.
Yeah.
Trim, don't shave.
So, and of course, speaking of strange colored things, what is this strange green object that you're putting in your mouth?
This is pretty standard for me.
That's true.
It's the green machine naked drink instead of the protein green one.
Okay.
Mixed with Mountain Dew. Standard, good old Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Good old Mountain Dew.
So there's like a blue Mountain Dew Voltage, a red, Code Red, and a whiteout Mountain Dew. And they currently have mixed all 3 of those into, Dew SA. Liberty Brew. I just got the classic here.
Well, that's I guess that's not too weird compared to your normal beverages. It's kind of in line. That's average weird, I suppose. All right, so around at later in the episode, we're going to do a giveaway. We have some fun stuff to give away from Shire Post Mint. They're going to give a gift card to one lucky winner here. And in general, you can go to shirepostmint.com and get 15% off by using the code HISTORY. So to be eligible for the giveaway, you just have to email WesteroSHistoryGiveaway@gmail.com, and we'll draw one random winner by the end of the episode.
We'll also give away some leftover pink hair dye.
But it doesn't work very well. So.
I couldn't keep my straight, sad face.
I did not see that coming. And so we're also going to be having every Tuesday, not every Tuesday, rather, the first Tuesday of every month, in addition to the last Saturday of every month. The first Tuesday of every month is going to be a Fire and Blood stream. Well, it won't always be Fire and Blood. It just will be. The next one will be. And that's a pretty big topic that we haven't fully explored. So a lot of them will be Fire and Blood streams, but they won't all be that. We'll have occasionally other topics, occasionally have some guests, things like that. And of course, if you're not aware, we are doing our Valar Reread Us project, going through all the books again. After having seen the show all the way through and reading Fire and Blood, it really pays to reread. And it's going really well. Y'all are giving us a ton of enthusiastic feedback. It's super, I'm just having a blast just rereading the books in general, but discussing it with y'all is really fun. How's your reread going, Sean?
My reread?
Your read, sorry, yes, your read, not read. Your reread.
I've stagnated. I had a lot of things that were put on hold during the season that I've like gotten into since, and I've read like maybe one more chapter. Still have not finished book 2.
Well,
I'll definitely have it done by the next stream. I'll definitely have it done by Con of Thrones.
Okay, cool.
I might have it done by the end of this week.
Well, that's
the whole series, right?
The whole series, yeah. And of course, almost all the Valar Reread Us streams are Sunday at 3 Eastern. So check us out on the next one. And they're semi-private because we don't want to have a million people asking questions. We would never be able to get through all the episodes and all the chapters. So if you want to be there, well, come to the Facebook group or come to Flick or join us on Patreon, and you can find easy access that way. Speaking of Con of Thrones, that's coming up really soon. Just a few things about that before we get into our main content. Unfortunately, John Bradley's not going to be there. That's a bummer. People were looking forward to having John Bradley photos with Gilly. Gilly is still going to be there as far as we know.
I'm devastated that John Bradley isn't going to be there,
It's
I
a real
have to
bummer.
say. And Bronn is going to be there. Oh, Sean, he's just, I just want to shake my fist at you.
It just keeps happening. Bronn just keeps popping up in place of things that Ashea wants.
So let me tell you that
I do want to rule the Reach. You're right.
I've said this before, that these cons are such exciting experiences that, I mean, we got to interview Sirio.
Yeah, that was so
on
fun.
stage.
Yeah.
You know, that was such an exciting, fun moment. And like, I mean, that's like a highlight moment of my life, right? And I think that there were 3 other moments at that con that were equally as exciting and fun. And and so I just want to throw it out there to whoever it is that needs to hear this. I will dye my beard pink if I can interview Jerome Flynn on stage.
So, I wanted to go briefly through some of the panels we're on. So I'll start with mine, and Ashea is going to pull up hers and Sean's while I'm going through mine.
Just real quick, because you guys are a little distracted there, I want to make sure you heard the pledge that I made.
What was the pledge you made?
I'll dye my beard pink if I can interview Jerome Flynn on stage.
Oh, well, but you've already promised to dye your beard pink.
Your beard and your hair.
I don't know about that.
You're promising something you've already promised.
Did you put it on your mustache too, Sean? It looks
I
like
did do
you
the mustache too.
I think
yeah.
it gave you a general nice different tone.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
Anyways.
There's a little bit of difference there, yeah. Cool. Well, okay, so let's go real quickly through some of the Con of Thrones panels we're doing, because these topics, some of these are going to be recorded and broadcast to y'all later, even those of you who aren't going to be there. So, and some of these also are kind of building blocks towards a few other episodes that we'll be doing in the future. So this is pretty cool. The first one, Ashea and I are doing together, is the Parallel Lives panel. A lot of y'all are familiar with our Parallel Lives stuff, and we're going to be introducing a few ones that we haven't talked about before and a few familiar ones for con-goers who aren't familiar with that. Also going to be doing Fit to Sit, which is the best and worst rulers of Westeros. That was a brainchild of Steve Love, and it's going to be me and Steve and Mikal Schick and Joanna Lannister and Sanrixian. By the way, I am wearing a Sanrixian shirt today. This is, of course, the North Remembers shirt. It's available at her store, and I highly recommend checking it out. She's got a lot of cool shirts there. And there's a live podcast that we're doing. That's all three of us. And we might get to do that on the main stage. I forget if that's on the main stage again, but that's great fun. We had a good turnout last year, and hopefully we'll have a good turnout this year as well. We're doing How to Govern Westeros with In Deep Geek is the moderator, and I'll be on that one with J.R. Rowley and Carol Brown. With Jen Snow, Joe Magician, and Crowfoot's daughter, I'm doing Rhaegar's Choice, A Song of Ice and Fire. With Ashea, I'm doing the Many-Faced Azor Ahai, which is a good example of one we're going to also have a video about. And we're going to also have a meet and greet there. That's a standard podcast and YouTubers. With Jim McGeehan, that's something like a lawyer. I'm doing Death of the Other, which is battle tactics against the others. That should be really fun. The show gave us a few clues on that, but there's a lot more we can go with and can predict and guess at. Tywin's Legacy is my last panel, and that's going to be with Wendy Weissman and again with Joanna Lannister.
Mm.
And none of us are big fans of Tywin's Legacy, so you can kind of guess which direction that's going to go. Maybe we should have brought someone on who was a fan of Tywin's Legacy, but we didn't really want that. His legacy already has enough defenders. And like Sean said, hopefully we have an interview. So we'll see about that. So Sean, what about beyond the panels that have already been mentioned? What have you got going for Con of Thrones?
I have several. I didn't have them in a document there. I should have gotten them in there. But let's see. I have Innocence Lost, The Children of Westeros.
Ooh, good one.
Again, the recording that we'll be doing. And they have a series of panels at Journey's End. And there's like a dozen different ones for different characters. I'm doing one with Bran Stark, or for Bran Stark, not with Bran Stark. I don't think. Maybe he'll show up.
Whoa, he's everywhere at once. You never know.
And one for Jon Snow. And then To Spoil or Not to Spoil, that's become a new element of modern society that people are trying to figure out how to deal with.
That is a tough one.
And
we've struggled with that on this show.
Yeah. And then The Mountain and the Hound.
Oh, good.
About the Clegane brothers.
Very cool. That's good. That's a good list. And what about you, Shay?
Wait. I should also point out there's the podcast meet and greet. But by the way, I'll have to just the scheduling. There's some overlap in the scheduling, so I'll have to leave that one a little bit early to do the water dancing with Miltos.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, you got to learn how to sword fight properly. Yeah. That's important.
Especially for Con of Thrones for Ice and Fire Con next year, where Sean always competes in the melee.
That's true. You learn from Sirio to go fight in a melee at a different con. That's cross con.
Cross con training.
Cross country.
So my panels, I start off the con with a nice 10 a.m. panel on Friday morning. Last of their name. More like first of their name. First of the morning. Ugh. But it's all about, obviously, extinct houses like House Gardner and House Hoare and, etc. I'm doing that with Joanna Lannister and Hamfast.
That's a good History of Westeros topic, and those are good guests.
Yeah, exactly.
Or good co-panelists.
I've frequently been on a lot of panels with Joanna Lannister, Lauren, and good friends with her, and have gotten things signed with George R.R. Martin with her. We went up and asked questions together. She's, if you're not familiar with her, she's just great. Then I'm on Queer Women of Ice and Fire. Which is with Yoshi, Melanie, and Archmaester Emma. So that's like a bigger panel, 4 people on it. And obviously, Aziz mentioned the Many-Faced Azor Ahai. That's just the 2 of us. Then I'm on the spin-off panel. It's on the main stage, about what we could see in terms of the spin-offs. And that's with a bunch of other people, 5 other people. Luca Nieto, David Rosenblatt, Dan Selke, Quinn from Ideas of Ice and Fire, and Lisa Sponeagel. So some Watches on the Wall people. That'll be fun. I love talking about the spin-offs, successor shows and all that,
Yeah.
It's actually, I don't know if we should probably mention this while we're on this topic. At TitanCon this year, we got added to the programming schedule. We're going to be on a panel on, the potential successor shows with Elio and Linda from
Yeah, we're
Westeros.org.
very excited about that.
Yeah, it's very cool. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah, that's true. We completely forgot to put that in this document as something that's coming up in the future. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, good catch there.
And then we have, our live recording and the Parallel Lives one. So I have 7 events this weekend,
cool.
unless we add
an
an
or something
interview.
else. Yeah.
I actually have one other engagement though, in that I'm doing photographs for the Bunny Hutch Party, which is where girls and guys dress up like Playboy bunnies.
I didn't even know there was a Bunny Hutch party yet.
Yeah, well, you're not invited, Aziz. No, it's open to all, but there's like a little photo shoot hour.
That's cool.
So I'm excited for that. That's a good time. They have it at Dragon Con.
Yeah, that's what I remember it
so
from.
It's pretty cool that they're doing it at Con of Thrones this year.
Cool.
Anyways, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff. History of Westeros is very well represented at Con of Thrones. You can walk around and bump into one of us, or catch us at the panels, or catch us at the parties and stuff in the evening. And we're all friendly. Come say hi. So let's move on to a few things about the Game of Thrones documentary. That was really fun. It wasn't exactly what I think a lot of people expected. It had less behind the scenes of the actors themselves, but that's fine. That wasn't a problem for me. I think some people were disappointed by that, but I was pleasantly surprised by what was there instead. It was made mostly by Jeannie Finley, and it focused more on the extras and the thing behind the scenes stuff that doesn't involve the main cast, which that was nice. And Game of Thrones as a story about not just the nobility, it focuses on the nobility. You also care about the plight of the common people. It was nice to see the regular folk who were extras, and a lot of them are huge fans of the show, not just enthusiastic to be, hey, I'm on HBO. It's Game of Thrones. Like, they love that it's not just a show that they're on, HBO. They love that they're on Game of Thrones. What did you think of the documentary, Sean?
I thought it was fine. It was about what I did expect. I feel like, it makes sense that people want to see more stuff about the actors.
Yeah.
Man, we get a lot of that already.
We do get a lot of that already.
And filmmaking is a collaborative effort,
Yes.
right? So there's a lot of effort beyond these actors that are going into this to make these actors look good. And it's neat to see all that effort. I constantly think about that when I'm watching a show. I'm like, what it took to get that dress together, what it took to get all those soldiers on this shot, how cold it is out there when they're standing around waiting for the action. You know what I mean? There's a lot of work. It's hours. It's got to be like every minute you watch of our podcast is like 10 minutes of work that goes into that 1 minute. And it's got to be 10 times as much for a show like Game of Thrones. When an hour-long episode must have weeks of effort going into it,
Yeah, it really must. And
by scores of people.
And it's good that we're talking about this now while we're going to talk about the prequel show as well, because that's what we have. We don't have like who these characters are. For the most part, we don't know yet. We have a lot of actors and we have a lot of sets, but we don't have like character names. We don't have writing.
I've got the script. I'm just not supposed to say anything about it.
But it's like what you're saying. There's so many people involved in just making these things before that stuff can even happen. They're building sets. They're building costumes. Like you said, the costume design is amazing. And, we'll get into this more later, but they have some of the same people doing some of this back-end stuff. They don't have the same people doing the writing and other stuff, which a lot of people are kind of like, phew. But the fact they have the same people doing some of the costumes, that's 2 thumbs up, right? I mean, because that stuff, people never seem to complain about that. It's all praise for the costumes for the most part. So that's really good. But we'll get into more of that later, but as far as the documentary goes, you see a lot of that behind the scenes. 2 of the main characters, let's say quote unquote main characters of this documentary, were someone we kind of know about, Vladimir Furtick, because he's the Night King. He's the actor who plays Night King, but he also is the actor that played Arthur Dayne, fighting with 2 swords, not speaking.
He's also the stunt coordinator for the show, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's like a Hollywood
neat segue,
guy. Yeah, just realized this guy had a lot to do with making Game of Thrones great, like just single-handedly. Even though so many other people did stuff.
Two-handedly.
2 swords, yeah, two-handedly. And just his enthusiasm was really fun too. Like that guy was just like,
wait a minute, Arthur Dayne is the Night King.
Day, night, it's all a trick. Oh my goodness. And so his enthusiasm was really nice to see. Like this guy in the behind the scenes, constantly behind the scenes, and just talking about his life was really neat. How he was almost like, it was like, go on this traveling show or join this gang. And he was like, wow, yeah, like I never had that choice. I'm so glad I didn't have to face that choice. But great dude, right? Like, we have a lot of respect for that guy. And of course,
I appreciated his moment of perplexity when he's getting a script. He's like, the little girl kills the Night King? Oh, goodness. Okay.
Everyone was perplexed by that. And just seeing like undead behind the scenes, like a tent full of dudes who were dressed up as whites and zombies and just like
drinking coffee.
Yeah, drinking coffee. One of them's like sitting there playing licks on his electric guitar. Two of them are playing chess. And Andrew McClay is the star extra, you could say. There were some other ones who were featured, but he was the one who got the most screen time, the most talkative, the most outgoing, the most exuberant. And
it's a good strategy to like focus in on one, accessible, character.
Yeah.
So,
it adds a little
person.
drama to
Yeah, and you start to connect to that person versus like, here's 2 minutes with them and them and them, like a bunch of talking heads.
And a great person to connect with too. Like I doubt they could have chosen a better ambassador for this documentary.
It's hilarious that obviously they made the documentary before people were like, wow, this guy has just been all over the place. But like those memes were going around. I call them memes, but they were just like a collection of the unnamed soldier.
So many people got such a kick, including myself, including all of us, I think, of learning that this one guy had been in all these battles of every season.
Yeah,
wow, this guy's been around. And he might pop up in the prequel show, because here's one of the things we learned pretty recently, not a big surprise, but major parts of the filming of this show are in Belfast again, so boom, he could be Aberdale Strongbeard could get right back in there. He made up his own name and background. It was
the
so
Strongbeards are an ancient house.
Yes, they used to be the Weakbeards, but they over time growing strong. Yeah. The Tyrells stole that.
No, I think they married into House Strong.
Yes,
killed them out. Yeah.
House Beard and House Strong married together, and that's where it landed. But tying all this together, if we can here, Mischief Management has volunteered to pay for one of the 3 guys in the Wolf and the Crows collective there. And the fandom is gathered together to try to pay to bring the other 2 to Con of Thrones. And there's a GoFundMe. And we would like to shout that GoFundMe out. I think I'm not sure if Ashay prepared a slide or not, but we have the link is in the description.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we didn't need a slide, but the link is in the description. They're at 3,700 out of 7,500, so about halfway there.
Yeah, so
in 7 days, there's some time, plenty of time.
So if y'all feel like donating, maybe don't donate to us today, but donate to that instead.
Yeah.
And help those guys come, because we would love. They're super fans. I would love to meet them. It's a little bit selfish on my part. I want to meet them too.
Rita got to meet them at Denver Comic Con, by the way.
Yeah, she did. We might have a chance to meet Andrew McClay, because in August when we go to Belfast, he does Belfast coach tours there.
That's right. That was what a great way to end the documentary, showing that this guy's still. He's giving tours. He's helping give tours to people who come for fans who come to see all the sets. And of course, he's super enthusiastic about it. Like, yeah, I want that guy to be my tour guide. Hell yeah, every day. So we always try to be supportive of people who are part of the community as much as we can. And I think a lot of people would get a kick out of getting to meet these guys. And of course, they would be. I feel like this is some amazing journey for them. They had no idea this would happen, probably.
I think they'll get a kick out of Con of Thrones. I think they'll be blown away.
I mean, they're
all the
fans,
cosplay
right?
and all the panels. Yeah, I think they are gonna love it.
Yeah.
I think they will want to come back every year. They're gonna be pumping it up. Yeah,
I hope so too. So please, y'all, support them if you feel like it, and if you're coming to the con, especially, I hope you can do that, because then you get a chance to meet them too. But that is all we have for the announcements. Unless you had something else you wanted to say about the documentary, either of y'all, we can. Get into the prequel show stuff. So the name it's being called Blood Moon, but that's not the real name of the show. It's a working title. They don't have a real title yet. I believe I read in Watchers on the Wall, who are going to shout out Watchers on the Wall several times in this episode, because they've done a lot of work on gathering data for this, but we did a lot of our own work on gathering data about this show. And hopefully y'all are going to learn a lot from what we've gathered. And what we've gathered from Watchers on the Wall is substantial as well. One of them pointed out, I forget which one of them was, pointed out that Return of the Jedi was called Blue Harvest for a long time until they decided on Return of the Jedi. It was called Revenge of the Jedi at first, if you recall back in the day. Am I thinking of the wrong Star Wars movie? I might be. It doesn't matter. The point is, code names or working titles are a common enough thing. Blood Moon's kind of a neat title, but we shouldn't read too much into it because it's probably not the real title.
It's probably actually Saliva Sun or something like
For
that.
example, though, like Star Wars, The Last Jedi was originally called Space Bear.
Space Bear. They should have
Yeah.
called it Space Bear. That's really cool. Is that B-E-A-R or B-A-R-E?
Like I like the animal bear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Space Bear. Yeah, I like Space Bear. That's really cool. So speaking of, before, actually, I did miss one thing before we get too deep into this.
Oh wait, hold on. I just want to say one more. My other
Yeah.
favorite Star Wars one, Solo, was Red Cup.
Red Cup? Oh,
Yeah.
Solo Cup, of
Yeah.
course.
So I like that.
That is pretty cool. Of course, they just ended up calling it Solo, which is like, they could have thought of that right away. That's one of those, like, let's call it Solo unless I don't want to call it Solo unless we think of a better title, but they never thought of a better title. So they was like, Solo. We'll go with Solo. Couple of shout outs from patrons who make the show possible before we get deep into our prequel show coverage here. Well, thanks to our Jeff Gnarly? He's our Jeff Gnarly. He's our first sword. History of Westeros' first sword. Jeff Gnarly, the long snapper, first in battle, first in bravery. And of course, our Dragon Rider patrons. We have Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow and Winterfell, rider of Mazalacartho, the white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons. Talanis the Talon, king of Gagassos, rider of Talarius, a red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of midnight black. Robert IV of Horse Ardeacor. No, House Ardeacor. Horse Ardeacor sounds cool too, but that's not accurate. It's House Ardeacor, Burned King of Blazewater Bay, rider of Atraxis, a black dragon with bioluminescent spots like smoldering embers, and a banded blue tail. He's a fearsome black and blue beast. Right. So, yes. Prequel show. We have probably it's going to debut late 2020, early 2021. I wonder if they kind of want to slot it back into that April timeframe that most of regular Game of Thrones was in. I don't know if that's a time, like a spot that they think has particular value, like it's the time of year that is really good for a show that they think is important. You know, there's different things in the movie and TV business that we're not fully aware of, like certain months are stronger than others. Like January is a really weak month in the cinema business. I only learned that because a theater around here played Game of Thrones, the Battle at the Wall at a movie theater, and we went there, it's like, wow, this is cool, but why are they doing this? I'm like, well, this is the slow time of year for
Nothing
movies,
else going on
so
in
we're going to
January.
put Game of Thrones on. We're like, well, that's good for us. So you are someone who knows a good bit of things about the filming industry and things like that, something you kind of pay attention to. And this is this timeline's a little bit aggressive for this show. You know, it's not quick in terms of like real life. Like from Game of Thrones, the original show, from its inception to it being filmed was like 5 years. This is more like 2.5. Now, part of that's because the success of Game of Thrones. They're like, wow, we got to strike while the iron's hot. But still,
They can
moving
more
fast.
immediately invest a lot of money.
Yeah,
you know?
they have a lot more expectation of success.
Yeah.
The road is paved already. But what does this timeline say to you? Does it seem kind of aggressive to you, or does it seem like right in line, or any comments at all on that?
I think it's right in line, but I know a little bit less about the nature of initial setup. Does that make sense? But if you just
Yeah.
think about it, most shows have a season a year. It takes about a year to get a season together, you know.
That's
so.
true. Especially because they have to do this pilot, and then they actually have to get approved.
Yeah, I can think about like Watchmen, for example. That's not out yet,
Yeah.
but we have a friend who worked on it, like the pilot for it, like a while ago.
Yeah. That's a good point too. Like,
Many months ago, and it still hasn't out yet.
Yeah.
so
for
it's probably
example.
partly how fast they want to get it out. If they want to be aggressive with getting it out because of marketing, or because they want to latch on to the success of Game of Thrones before that fades too much. These things all make sense. Watchmen's obviously it's a good example, but it's also not a great example because it's a known property already. It's not a new show. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which is
Neither
one
is
of, which
Blood
is one
Moon.
of the reasons I thought of it. To be
Yeah, no,
honest.
that is a good example. Yeah, so that's one that's even slower, but also well known, but also not as popular. But they're certainly banking on it being popular now because HBO lost Veep and Game of Thrones, two of their biggest shows, and
Yeah.
they're really trying to get some new stuff going to recapture the magic, so to speak. Now, speaking of magic, that's a big thing we're expecting in the show, that it was maybe taken out of the TV show or Game of Thrones proper initially. Like, some of the magical elements of Game of Thrones were not put on screen. You know, there's a lot of, like, that's if you were to divide the genres within a Game of Thrones: politics, intrigue, war, you know, character conflict, magic. Magic was one of the ones that was minimized the most out of all those, probably. Maybe not the most, but a lot. Like, the Children of the Forest weren't super explained. The origin of the others, we didn't get too deep into that. Dragons, the mystery of dragons wasn't delved into a lot. You know, like the lore, the gods. There's a lot of this stuff that was tantalizing that we constantly throughout our coverage were asking about, but we didn't really get a lot of answers on. This show is our chance to get some of that, maybe.
You can maybe, a slightly better term might be mystical elements.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
better.
Show,
That's
fantastic
better, yeah.
elements of the show, which would include magic, but and again, it's not like they didn't have any of it, but they didn't get too deep with it. And honestly, I kind of like it that way. I think when you start trying to explain midichlorians or whatever, you take some of the magic away and you start creating more opportunities for people to pick apart the logic or consistency behind it. And I have a harder time relating to characters in a world where they can just conjure up magical things than when they have to deal with real world issues like me, you know.
Like having magic as a cost. That's something that George R. R. Martin has made an important part of his world, is that magic is not expensive, but it has a high human cost, or whether it requires blood or sacrifice, or it steals your life for. Like Stannis, in the book, Stannis seemed to have aged because of the shadow babies.
Mm-hmm.
And then Melisandre's like, nah, I can't do another one. You're too weak. It'll kill you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the kind of costs.
She needed to have blood from, a royal bloodline.
Whereas in the show, when they don't tell you that, you're just like, well, why doesn't he just do it again?
Yeah.
People asked that question, I remember, at the time, and I was like, well...
I wonder what the cost to Arya is for putting on a fake face.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these things for Arya,
she loses some of her identity. That seemed to be
that
part of the
is
training.
Part of the idea.
So, and that was kind of a little bit of that was lost on Game of Thrones proper as well. And we have to see how that's going to go in the books, because Arya is still in Bravos in the books at this point, so we don't know. But George has made that pretty clear. Part of her arc is her identity, and whether she keeps it or loses it, or some combination of both, loses it and then gets it back, what have you.
I'm sure that's part of why they decided on this particular setting too. Like, even as I say, I'd rather there be less magic. I'd rather it be kind of this background mysterious thing that rears its head every now and then, rather than this constant in-your-face central focus. But I'm sure it's going to be more popular when you have more fantastic stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's part of why they didn't choose Robert's Rebellion as a spin-off,
Yes,
right? Because that would have, I felt like that was a good choice, because you get to connect all these characters and these houses, this time frame that we know about. But also, there's no dragons in Robert's Rebellion, and there's no wizards in Robert's Rebellion, you know.
And everyone knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, plus the story's already known.
There's not enough mysteries. I
that's
think
true
that's the part. I think that was the big bugaboo for Robert's Rebellion, is there's just not enough surprises for them to do. And they love to do surprises. They love surprises.
Yeah.
I think you should work bugaboo into every episode. I've never heard you say that word in my life.
Yeah, I don't know how that slipped out. I don't use that word regularly, but it got in there. And so that's something which is a good question, right? Like, what if we're HBO? If we're trying to put ourselves in the shoes of HBO, what made Game of Thrones successful that they're trying to recapture? And I think one of the things that made it successful, there's a lot of things. We can't just narrow it down to one or two. There's a ton of things. But one of them was, and this is really hard to recapture, is that people would talk about it every Monday. It was a big social event. And that's, like you said, if you give away a lot of the magic, there's nothing to talk about. You know how it works. But if there's that mystery, it's a great thing to talk about. People were like, oh, it could be this. You get theories. It just makes the wheels turn in your head. But if you know the answers, you're just like, well, it still can be interesting, but you just don't have as much to talk about. So generating discussion, I think, is a big, fun thing about Game of Thrones. And I imagine they're trying to recapture that part, that magic.
I have to tell you, it's my one big complaint about streaming services. I just think that like a lot of them are losing out by and like I'm
agree.
disappointed when they release them all at once because I feel like I need to binge them. You can't have discussions. It's
Then you feel kind of like undisciplined for not doing doing it the way you think would have been more fun because you don't. None of us seem to have the self-control to wait, and we know our friends don't either. It's not like if I wait, my friends aren't going to be waiting. They're going to be 5 episodes ahead of me.
Yeah.
You know?
Not to mention it might just get spoiled for you. It's
Yeah.
another factor.
So
in
yeah, I
modern
think
times.
there are
one, yeah.
shows that are on Netflix and Amazon and the like that they would blow up a lot more if they just were spread out over 13 weeks.
Yeah,
or
I do
even
feel
if
like-
even if they were half and then half, over like a couple of weeks.
Orange
Anyways.
is the New Black, Stranger Things, these come
Yeah.
out, and
They're
for
just-
about 10 days, everyone's talking about it. And then 3 weeks later, no one's talking about
Yeah,
it.
and those shows
And
do
if
really
they-
well, but they
parsed it out a little bit more, just maybe 3 episodes a week for a month or something
Yeah.
like that.
Then they would really be dominating. Yeah.
And that's a concept we understand more here as podcasters because podcasts, far more than TV, we're a much smaller thing, obviously.
Yeah, imagine
Vastly
if we
smaller.
released 13 episodes on one day and then none for like a year.
Yeah, that would be terrible, right? But that's not even what I meant. But you're right. That's a great point. What I meant is that we rely on word of mouth more than we're not on TV. So we're not in this, you don't hear about other podcasts unless you're searching. The place that people hear about podcasts is from their friends. You don't see commercials for podcasts very often. Well, you'll never see commercials, but you might hear one on another podcast. But I mean, it's just a lot harder. So we rely on word of mouth. So we get that. We get that. We understand the power of word of mouth because we rely on it so much. So when we hone in on this for the TV show, it's like, that matters so much. People talking about Game of Thrones every week, that really, really matters. People want to join in and be like, what are you guys talking about? I want to join in on this. I want to watch that show and join on these conversations, blah, blah, blah.
By the way, it's not a new thing, this idea of
You're right.
releasing things episodically. That's how Charles Dickens wrote his novels.
Oh, yeah.
He released chapter at
Serialized.
a time in like newspapers and local magazines or whatever that would eventually, after a year or whatever, he had a book. But
People have floated that idea to George R. R. Martin because the books are so long. The problem with that is that he has to go back and
he
change
needs to
them.
rework things.
Yeah, he can't just, it doesn't work that way.
And it'll give a lot away if you see his
That's
earlier
true.
versions.
That's true.
I've been really into web series, which are just written original tales, and I've followed some over years, and it's fantastic. It's a very different experience to reading a book normally, honestly.
So what are other things that, so that's a great, I think we captured that slice pretty well, but there's a lot of other slices.
I
we
did
wanna
real
hone
quick.
in
I
on.
just wanted to make a reference here. The
Sure.
idea of like week to week talking about it. Do you remember that old Saturday Night Live skit with Chris Farley when he would have guests on?
Yeah.
And he would he'd have Tom Hanks on. Do you remember when you did Big? Yes, I remember that. You remember when you were dancing on the piano? Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Let's take a few quick questions that have popped up here, and actually mostly just comments. I don't see any questions, so we'll just run through y'all's names here. Quick shout outs for people who have donated here. Stephen Stark, our Hand of the Queen, sent a unicorn sticker. Thank you, Stephen. Looking forward to seeing you at Con of Thrones. And by the way, y'all, after our stream is over, about an hour after our stream is over, go to Stephen Stark's channel where he will be interviewing Crow Food's daughter, Amanda. And she is a wonderful theorist and great member of the community. And so is Steven himself, and his show is called Hey, I Know That Nerd, or it's just I Know That Nerd. I don't think there's the hey in there. Is there the hey in there? I don't remember. Either way, it's I Know That Nerd. It's a great idea for a show. He's just interviewing different people around the fandom and get to know them better. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, super chat from Sammy V, or is that Sammy the Fifth? I'm not sure. Ben La Soul says, just showing love. Well, thank you very much, Ben. We'll show you love in return. Jill Wright, upside down smile sticker. Thank you very much, Jill. LMC says, I'll bleach and dye your beard for you, Sean.
We got into a discussion after that, and I said, well, we will not make Sean bleach his beard. But what I will probably do is use some of that nice hair. There's colored hair gel you can get, and you just put it in like the day of, and it'll be super pink and just come out. So unless you want to bleach your beard, in which case let's do it.
I don't
didn't
want to
think
bleach
you
the
would
beard,
want
but I
to.
wouldn't mind something that stays for a week or whatever.
Okay, we'll talk about this more.
Options.
But regardless,
All right,
I
cool.
don't even know where LMC lives, so unfortunately, I think you're left with me.
And also, thanks for the super chat from Kai Real. All right. Y'all definitely feel free to ask questions. I know it's harder to ask questions about this topic because we all know so little about it. But as we go forward, I hope maybe some questions will be raised as we reveal what we've learned here. So along the same lines, things that make Game of Thrones great. We've talked about, a few of the things so far, but what are some other things, like things that draw you to the show? Things that when you're trying to sell the show to somebody else.
Boobs. No.
Okay, well, there's a pretty good chance there'll be boobs in this show too. So yeah, boobs are not unlikely. What are other things? Elbows.
I will
ears,
say, let's see.
Toes. Other
One
body
thing
parts?
about that really something that I think drew me and a lot of people to it, that it's a little bit harder to identify, at least originally, is there are a lot of subverted expectations.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's one thing. But it's hard to catch that that's happening, and it's hard to explain that to someone as you pitch it without like telling them what the things are, and sometimes even knowing that there's going to be a surprise starts to give away the surprise. But it is definitely part of it, and I expect it will still be there. I think there's the blurb that they've put out there is it's not the story you think it is, or something like that.
Yes,
right?
which is a rather common tagline, but you're right, but it does totally fit with what you're saying. Yeah.
So the other thing I would say that really like hooked me was that no character was safe.
Mm-hmm.
Let me clarify, because that's not totally it. That's a part of it, but it even led to my note-taking style. Okay, it wasn't clear to me who the story was about. They did such a good job of spreading the story out and developing so many different characters. My note-taking technique was an attempt to figure out who the main character is, who's the main story. What am I watching?
Before you realized
here?
that there wasn't one.
Yeah,
like,
well, I sort of decided it's Ned Stark. Ned Stark is the main. He's cut that story's head off. That was the main character. So I think that some combination of like the idea that characters aren't safe, that whoever you think is your favorite or the most central character might be killed, makes you really fear for all the characters. You really believe when there's a battle that anyone could die. Yeah. Whereas when I go to watch Marvel movies, I'm just like waiting for this action scene to be over because I'm not worried about anything.
Yeah, they're not even going to come out of it hurt.
Right. Yeah. But in Game of Thrones, I'm like really on the edge of my seat.
Even if a character lives, they might like lose a hand.
Might be maimed.
Something that really changes who they are.
So that's kind of a swirl of factors, but I think that, and maybe that's connected to subverting expectations too, I guess, but really caring about the characters, really being worried about what happens to them, whether it's because you're really rooting for their success or because you're really scared that they may die.
And part of that is
the
them doing
character
a great job
development in the first place, and the casting, the performance. There's a lot like there's a sort of a floor of production quality that HBO is just going to have no matter what. And Game of Thrones elevated that along the way.
Yeah, right, they did.
So it's hard to just say one thing, but I think that a lot of the things kind of swirl around the idea of really making you care about the characters. And ways that you do that are killing characters off.
Yes.
Subverting expectations, developing the characters well.
And a meta thing that happens in there, this is an interesting add-on to what you're saying, is that sometimes they maybe cloud the issue or make it too clear with regards to who is the main character and who isn't, with regards to their fate, by who the actor is, right? Like, Sean Bean was a famous actor, kind of famous for dying, yet somehow that we didn't put that all together. But for example, you got a lot of these actors and actresses in, say, these other fantasy properties that are being picked up. Lord of the Rings show, Wheel of Time show, Brandon Sanderson stuff. These are mostly casting unknowns because they don't know if they're going to be successful, and the people and experienced veteran actors don't want to tie themselves to a huge project that might typecast them and might not go well, because these are ambitious projects.
Yeah.
But that's different here. That's a major difference with Blood Moon, is this is already a successful franchise. So they're not casting nobodies. They're casting people who were well known. And when I say nobody, I don't mean people who are untalented, obviously. I mean people who aren't famous yet. And that's not just the actors and actresses. That's also the production people. You have the people working on Blood Moon are people with really heavy credits, really major productions under their belt. The kind of people that would not touch Lord of the Rings. They would not touch Wheel of Time because these projects are too big, too risky they're perfect for someone getting started in an acting production career, etc. Not good for established people because it's too risky, too time consuming, etc. So that's a thing that we have to take into account here when we're looking into some of these characters. We know Naomi Watts has been cast. Naomi Watts is a famous actress. But because this is a Game of Thrones production, she could go the new way of Ned Stark and just be killed at the end of the season or killed during the season. If it was any other production, we'd be like, okay, Naomi Watts is a main character and she's safe. But that's a huge difference here. So it's I like the groundwork they've laid on how they made the past show makes this more mysterious. Yeah, there's still a lot we can say about it. So let's give a few examples. The production tells us a lot of things. We can get really meta and think about what their intent might be just based on some of these things. For example, if they were to have cast a bunch of Asian actors, that would tell us something. We'd be like, oh, Yi-Ti. They're going to do Yi-Ti, right? Or they're just changing some other area of the world to be somewhat Asian. But they didn't. There's like no Asian people cast, which doesn't mean there won't be because this is only one episode. This is the pilot.
Yeah, you could see them introducing the main characters here and then expanding that either throughout that season or in season 2. Like you don't necessarily want to see the whole world in one season.
Yeah. I mean, think about Game of Thrones episode 1. We got Pentos and Winterfell. That's it. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
It really, really expanded from there. But this first episode, this pilot, might only have 1 or 2 or 3 locations. But the fact that there are a much more diverse cast in terms of ethnicity, that implies, it doesn't say for sure, it implies multiple locations. Because we don't, unless they've changed some things, which is possible, it doesn't make, quote unquote, a lot of sense for a lot of First Men characters to be, say, people of color. But there's several people of color cast, which means that either they've just tweaked canon so that some of the First Men were people of color, which would be fine. I wouldn't complain about that. It's totally fine. But it also could just mean that this is some other location, like the Summer Islands or some other place like that. So these are interesting things we can tell like that.
Visitors from other lands may come to
Absolutely.
where all the First Men are.
And so the fact that they have a pretty big cast for just a pilot, I researched about 12 different actors here who we know who are cast. That's a good number, and especially because more are being added. Like Miranda Richardson was only announced about a month or 2 ago as a pretty major actress, and there's probably more coming. So I think that's really interesting. Just comparing these other fantasy shows that have a ton of money behind them. They have just as much as money and power behind them, but they have a different approach with their star power.
Also worth noting that a lot of main characters weren't in the first episode of Game of Thrones. Like there was no Littlefinger, there was no Varys, there was no Stannis in the whole first season.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of room to develop the cast.
You're right. I mean, and they
there
started.
was no Sam Tarly.
Yeah,
yeah,
and they started adding sort of people who had a little bit more fame. Like even if it was just a one-off, like Jonathan Pryce was a famous actor and he had a long role, but then they did Ian McShane who just had 1 episode, but he's a really famous actor too. That would that might be something that happens later in the show if it gets picked up. Everybody wants to be part of Game of Thrones now, right? Now, there's other things we can tell. Also, production gives us some clues. I mentioned earlier that some of the same costume people were around. Well, let me bring up Catherine McNally here. She was the costume coordinator, or she is the costume coordinator for Blood Moon. She was the costume coordinator for seasons 1 through 3 of Game of Thrones. And then she seemed to leave Game of Thrones for 1 year in 2014, where she did Dracula Untold and Halo Nightfall. And then she came back to Game of Thrones to be the location coordinator.
Whoa, I just realized if she did Dracula Untold, that's the armor that people use all the time, fan casting, like for Targaryens. He has this like sick red and black, like dragon armor in that movie.
Are you sure? I thought that was Bram Stoker's Dracula from even farther back.
No.
The one with Gary Oldman. Okay, they both did it then, because Gary Oldman's armor in the farther back Dracula is also super badass and dragony. And
I don't remember him.
It looks amazing, yeah. But anyway, either way, that's
I
awesome.
got it. I'm gonna put it on the screen even.
Cool.
Just because it's like perfect Targaryen armor.
So,
people can wait for that.
Yeah. But of course, there's not much call for Targaryen armor to be in this show. But still, the fact that this was really cool armor, that just.
Hey, Targaryens got their inspiration from somewhere. Just saying.
Good point. So that's really cool. So they brought her in, brought her back. That's excellent. And as far as showrunners, I think most of y'all probably know this, but Dave and Dan have nothing to do with it. George R. Martin himself does have a good bit to do with it. The showrunner is Jane Goldman. She's the main person. Now, she has done things like X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, Kingsman, and Kick-Ass. Now, Kick-Ass was Kick-Ass. That's a great film.
Of all those, I like Kick-Ass way more than the rest.
I'm with you there. I don't know that much about Kingsman, though. I can't judge Kingsman. I don't know anything about it. And this is, like I said, co-written by George R. Martin to some degree. We're not clear on how involved in the project he is, but certainly as far as the world building, he's heavily involved. As far as the writing, the actual episodes, that's less likely to be have his heavy involvement, but we'll see. And so what this tells me about Jane Goldman, she's filmed the X-Men. Something interesting about X-Men. One of the themes, now this could be just a parallel that I'm pointing to that doesn't exist, but it struck me and I want to bring it up, see what you guys think. One of the themes of X-Men is these characters of powers that are shunned, right? There's a lot of potential for that here. Skin changing, wargs. Is that accepted? Was that accepted back in the day? Or was that something that people were afraid of and shunned? Or somewhere in between?
It seemed to be treated with suspicion in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so how will it be treated this thousands of years earlier? So that's, I wonder about that. It could be treated that way too. And that's something she would have experience with writing about or filmmaking about. So that's interesting. And just people with powers, in general. Not like you said, we're not going to have people just shooting lightning bolts out of their hands like you do in X-Men. But,
not with that attitude.
What it makes me think of is, X-Men, the X-Men movies have a huge cast,
yeah,
which is impossible in a movie like that, and they do not handle it well. But maybe with, seasons, she knows better what to do. I don't know.
The X-Men movies would have been way better as an 8-part series.
Yeah.
There was just so much more time to develop the
100%.
characters, which is what you need to care. You don't care about the plot if you don't care about the characters going through the plot.
And I will say X-Men First Class, at least, is one of the better
I liked
X-Men
it.
movies.
That was
Like,
one of
there's
the
some
better,
things
yeah.
I really disliked about it, but at least some of the parts were really good.
Mm-hmm. It did have its good moments, yeah. It certainly had its weak points, too. I would agree with that. But and like you said, Sean, the conflict, that is really important. Like, right, you can't go through all that character development so quickly, and that is what would make it so much more compelling, is like someone like Nightcrawler, who is doesn't look human. And there's a lot of richness possibility there, as someone who's not accepted, who has this who's shunned, and just going through his conflict would be really neat. But you can only spend a couple minutes on each character in a movie.
I've had this thought developing in my mind recently about how something that makes sense to me, and I see it playing out. Is it when you have these big budget movies, we have these new special effects we've never had before. The filmmaking industry is bigger than it's ever been before. And, when you want to get these big actors and put these special effects in a movie and you have this $100 million budget, well, you need to make your $100 million back, right? And so people are excited. There's a lot of different reasons people go to watch movies. And I tend to be looking for serious drama or insight into human nature or whatever. Whereas a lot of people are looking for explosions and chase scenes and fights and whatnot,
yeah.
And if you can get both in the same movie, that's really good. But it's a lot to develop in a movie. It's hard to get that. And even these Avenger movies have been over 2 hours long. But it makes sense to me to have these big action, big budget, explosive movies on the big screen. But on TV, you have time to develop characters. TV is where you can have 8 hours worth of material, and somewhere in there you might have a chase scene, an explosion, whatever, but you get to focus more on character development.
It doesn't have to be all about that chase scene, yeah.
Right.
It's nice if the chase scene is a thing that happens, but not the focus of the whole darn thing,
And a big production on HBO, or Game of Thrones, successor series, will have time to develop these characters, but have budget for some CGI or whatever. I feel like they're going to get to hit all the bases here. I really hope that they don't sacrifice character development just to have more magic in here. But
I agree.
Wouldn't it be really interesting if a network released their big budget TV show also in movie theaters?
In the theaters?
Like every
that
week?
would be cool. That would be fun. Given the way a lot of movie theaters have turned towards,
you go every week. Now, some weeks I could skip it and watch it at home, or maybe they'd have another showing. I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment.
I don't go. This is a good little mini conversation here, and I want to point out too that I don't go to a lot of movies. I prefer TV shows mostly because of what you just said. You just don't. I want to stay in that world longer if it's worth being in. I want to learn these characters. I want to learn about them. I want to learn their personalities. You just don't have that time in 2 hours unless it's a small cast. You do have that time if it's a small cast, but I like large casts.
Yeah.
So it just isn't a good format for what I want out of this entertainment in that sense.
And I think we're seeing, there's the recognition of the industry of how to divvy up their resources, and we're seeing the best shows, the best TV shows ever by far. Like every week, the new best show of all time comes out. I feel like it's crazy how many great shows are out there.
Yeah.
Whereas movies, I've been like, they're okay. Past couple years of movies have had a couple gems and a bunch of okay. Where I feel like if you go back to the '90s, like every year had like 5 classics.
Right on.
Real quick, can I interrupt? Just
Sure.
To share with people? Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. People could still hear me. But, we were talking about that armor that Catherine McNally would have worked on for Bolt. Like she would have worked on it for Dracula Untold. And I showed it earlier, but also I forgot to mention that Michael Klarfeld, for his Dorne map, he used that armor as his basis for Rhaegar Targaryen. Uh-huh. And I'm going to put it on screen right now, them compared, just because it's a fun comparison. Anyways, I never realized she worked on Game of Thrones and Dracula Untold. I think that's really, really cool.
It'd be awesome if Michael Klarfeld had something else in the works.
Oh. How many days now?
Yeah.
1 day? 2 days?
It's soon, right?
It should be 1 or 2 days. I forget the exact. Anyways.
We can say what it is, right?
Yeah, it's his Dorne map. Yay!
Michael's Dorne map's coming out, folks. Get excited. You know how good work he does, and we've seen it already. Man, it's good. So you won't be surprised, but you will be surprised. All right, let's take a quick mid-roll break, give a couple shout-outs, and then we'll come back with a lot more about the prequel show. We have to talk about the fact that Essos and Westeros were one continent back then. We have to talk about what physical features will exist and won't. We have to talk about the socialite with a dark secret. That's Naomi Watts' character, and all the other people who have been cast. So we have a lot more to go through, so stick with us, folks. Shout out to our co-authors who helped with the book The Thrones Effect that Ashay and I contributed to Chapter 2. And if you would like to get that book yourself, you can get it on Audible or a physical copy. The links are in the description of this episode. Our chapter is all about Game of Thrones' influence on pop culture and non-pop culture, like police and parents and pet owners, fun stuff like that. And there's
it's
a lot.
Weird that it only affected things that start with P.
I didn't notice that. I missed that pattern. And there's also chapters by Smokescreen and Gray Area and Game of Thrones Academy and Ideas of Ice and Fire. Lots of great stuff in there. Check it out. It's a pretty cheap book. You don't have to drop much dollars to get your copy. And it supports all these YouTubers and podcasters. Also, some shout outs to our Queens of Love and Beauty. We got a pair of them here. From the depths of Flea Bottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer has declared for Queen Carrie, Fire of the North, who recovered Dark Sister from beyond the wall. And introducing a laurel of glory in the name of love to Bud of House Beresford, Knight of Tolkien and Arbiter of Scotch, from Sandy the Dragon, Blood of Queen Daenerys and Lady of Jameson. Yes.
I just want you to know that I can't see or hear Queen of Love and Beauty without thinking Queen of Love and Booty. It's just part of my brain now.
Shout out to Chloe Ketchum.
Yes.
And Girls Gone Canon. Fantastic show. Yeah, it's true. I kind of do the same. Also, shout out to our Blood Rider patrons who are evading me on the page here at the moment. There they are. Vorsaki, wielder of a Valyrian steel arak with a dragonbone hilt. Kohelkoi, called Sunpiercer, wielder of a dragonbone bow. And Kakavo the Tamer, wielder of the wildfire whip Gehenna.
I'm really curious if we put you on a stage, if we could just get you to repeat how many patron names you could just, say off the top of your head.
Oh, wow. Was this from memory?
From memory?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I could probably do a good number.
Yeah,
I
think
have read these
so.
so many times. I'm sure some of them I would kind of get wrong. But
A little bit wrong, yeah.
Well, let's also give some shout outs to our sellsword captains. I believe it's their turn. Peter Blaze of the Emerald Isle, captain of the Werewood Wanderers, to long lives, quick deaths, cold beer, and warm women. Daeron is Marshal of the Axe, captain of the Red Tide, resistance is futile. Kyron Callsbane is captain of the Stone Shields, the torrent breaks upon the stone. Hema Helminth is captain of the Whispering Children. Dead men tell no secrets. Shepard is the shepherd of Essos. All men are sheep before the shepherd, heir to the Whispering Children. Lady Lajara Dajo is the Iron Lily, master archer, castellan of the Summer Island Keep Arboreal Point, and captain of the all-female Wailing Widows. Women and children first. Cody the Crimson is bastard of Bracken, captain of the Red Waste Exiles and recruiter of the Free Folk. Cameron the Hammer of Hornwood is captain of the English Lions with the motto, honor is the reward of virtue. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is captain of the Shadow Wolves. Our steel is cold, our vengeance colder. Black Alex Sand is the bastard of Spears, leader of the Bermuda Vanguard. And Bitter Steel is captain general of the Golden Company. Beneath the gold, the bitter steel. And our word is good as gold. Because they're the Golden Company, they get more than one motto. Because when you're a big 10,000 size sellsword company, you get to call yourself whatever you want, and no one can stop you.
They actually have 10,000 mottos. We just picked a couple of them out.
Each member of the company has a motto. Their work is one, but they also don't. And speaking of...
that's one of the mottos. We work as one, but we also don't.
I wonder if sellswords will be much of a thing in this prequel show. It seems like that's an ancient profession, but it may not have been established as a thing. There may not have been enough nation states for it to be a viable living for a large number of fighters. There may not have been enough wars at that time or in certain areas. Well, it's one of many questions about the setting we can't easily answer, but we are very curious about.
I've gotten the idea that the world of Ice and Fire is, I don't know if stagnant is quite the right word, but they don't seem to progress technologically very much.
That is very true.
You know?
George has weighed in on that. He says that if you look at human history, so much of the progress has been
just in the past couple hundred years.
Yeah. And that's, he says, like, if it wasn't for the Industrial Revolution, we might still be doing medieval stuff even now.
Yeah, if you picture a graph, it's not just a steady incline of up.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Although still it was like a 2,000 year slow growth, where this is 10,000 years old.
But you can have resets, things can go back, you can backslide, and magic really messes with the whole
different
thing.
areas of the world could advance and extinguish.
And that has happened. Yeah, we've seen that. Like ET and some of these, like Ashra, these places were far more advanced than Westeros.
Also, human history goes back a lot farther than you just said right there, Sean.
Yeah,
as well, I must say.
There was there's thousands of years of history, but we only have written history for maybe 4,000.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
2,000-ish thousand of those are kind of like lost.
Yeah.
But for example, they had like sewer systems in ancient Egypt, and then they didn't have them in medieval France. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So it was like,
you're right. Yeah, I'm like the show, The Last
Library
Kingdom.
of Alexandria burned down.
Yeah, the show and books, The Last Kingdom. That's a big kind of overshadowing thing. Is these are guys living in Saxon England, in the shadow of Rome had existed a few hundred years ago, and none of them have any idea how to build the things that Rome built, and so they feel like they're on the decline. They that's like we're heading towards the end times, and it's like cast a shadow over everything. It's like, whoa, what a weird thing to have hanging over you at all times. Like imagine that if we lived imagine if New York City was deserted, abandoned, like whoa, and no one knew how to make like how did they make those skyscrapers? Like that's kind of what it's like in a sense. But in Westeros and Essos, there's a lot more magic to it. There's like, why do no plants grow next to these oily black stones? That there could be a scientific reason for that, but it's probably a magical reason. So if you missed it from the beginning, we are doing a giveaway by the end of the episode. It'll probably be around the end of the episode. Shire Post Mint, email Westeros History Giveaway at gmail.com to be entered automatically, and we'll announce the winner around the end of the episode.
All right, so they can send their emails in now, right?
Yeah, go ahead and send your emails in if you haven't been doing so already, and we'll draw that winner. $100 credit to Shire Post Mint.
Yeah.
Okay, so more production stuff. Let's actually let me take a few more questions here. Looks like we've had a couple more questions added here from Steven Stark. Who would you like to see cast that hasn't been announced yet? Good question. I assume he means character and not actor or actress.
I was assuming you meant actor.
Actor or actress,
Oh.
for sure. I was imagining.
Okay, I'm wrong then. Oh, well, what do you guys think? I was thinking about the question wrong.
I want 100% unknown people. I hate it for these types of shows. I want unknown people. I want it to send their careers. I want to discover new people, new actors. I don't know. That's
cool.
My first thought. I'm already kind of drawn out by the idea of Miranda Richardson and Naomi Watts. Yeah.
Okay.
I like for there to be a couple known people. I think I don't know how to say this exactly, but I think it adds some weight to it. Like, oh, here's this person, you know.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I also like for not necessarily be completely unknown people that like that guy was a tertiary character in that random show I saw. Like I like to recognize them from something, but still, to your point, Shea, for this to be like a launching pad for someone whose career is just getting started, and now they're gonna make it big. You know.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
good
like
that they have that as an option, or that's because there are a lot of these actors that we've seen cast. None of them are nobodies, but there are some who are less famous than others. But there hasn't been a single one where that we've seen their name associated with this, and they didn't already have an IMDb page with several things on it.
Like
that
there's
were
a few
pretty
of these
substantial in a lot of
that I recognize, but I feel like I only recognize them because I watch a lot of TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
that's
I
one
wouldn't
part
expect
of it.
everyone else to recognize.
Some of them are more
but-
recognizable than others, because a lot of them are because it's overwhelmingly British. the
Yeah, I
cast,
guess
which
people who watch more British television would be
yeah, recognizing
more of them.
exactly. Question from.
But
Well,
anyway, I'd like to see Tom Cruise. Just kidding.
yeah, I don't know. I don't have a particular actor or actress that comes to mind that I would really like to see attached to it. I like Shea's point, but I think you're right too that having a couple, just dotting it, the occasional like veteran in there that people know is helpful. From Top Shelf Fandom, got a.
Wait, actually, I have an answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I love Antonia Thomas from Misfits, and she just hasn't been in anything. Alicia from Misfits in ages,
yeah.
and so she's a known entity. And Ewan Rian was Ramsey, and so I just want to see both of them in there. Him as Ramsey.
Missandei
and
was in
her
that show, and so was Pip.
Yeah, they've been. Catelyn was in Misfits.
Oh yeah,
as a
Catelyn.
small
Yeah, of
part.
course. Yeah.
I could keep naming off people, but I just wanted that, and truly, I want to see more Misfits cast members. Oh, Mira Reed, of course, was in it.
Oh yeah.
Ellie Kendrick. Anyways, so I want Misfits actors specifically, I guess.
Right on. Okay. From Top Shelf Fandom, Super Chat, got to run. It's always a pleasure, though, guys. Thank you for that. From I Don't Know How to Change Names. Should HBO focus on creating culturally interesting work or focus on reproducing success of Game of Thrones? I don't see why they can't do both. They're a really huge shop. They put out a ton of shows, and I think they are producing culturally interesting work, pretty frequently. But there's nothing wrong with making some dollars, especially because they're making dollars of something that was quality that a lot of us want to see. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving the audience what they want,
Well,
To a certain degree.
What might be
to a
wrong
certain
with that
degree.
is that there's different audiences.
Yes.
And so you're trying to give all the audiences what you want, and which sometimes when you do that, you end up not giving any audience what they want. It's a tough balance to make. And a fear I do have is a lot of times you see, whether it's a show, Game of Thrones specifically, or even a lot of movies, there's sort of this ramp up in epicness, right? And so when you start again, sometimes you start at the ramped up level and don't give yourself anything to grow into.
Yeah.
And I would say that's my biggest concern. That they're gonna start off with a lot of grand special effects and magic, and then they won't be able to like slow burn to this powerful 9th episode, where dragons are born. Holy crap,
Well, there's a few things that speak to what you're saying as we get into some of the production notes and who they hired. That does give us some idea. Like if you hire a director has a lot of experience filming action scenes, that tells you something, for example, right? If you hire someone that's...
I mean, can you really guess that they're not going to have a lot of action? Or do you mean like once we get a little bit further and we see who's filming what episodes?
Well, the fact that they've already, this is a specific example, they've already hired Matthew Dunn, who his roles, he's an assistant director, and if you look at his IMDb, it's all action movies. Patriot Games, Starship Troopers, Marked for Death, Fantastic Four, Mission Impossible 3, X-Files, Rookie of the Year, Planet of the Apes. This is a guy who has tons of, and he is already hired, which means just for the pilot.
But as an assistant director.
Well, he was an assistant director for all those.
Right.
He was always second director for these action shots. Like he's the action assistant.
Right.
guy.
So that's my hope, is that they're going to have a director who's in charge of the entire production.
Yeah.
And when it comes to action scenes, all right, we
They
got
have
the
this
action
guy.
expert.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't think
you
this
make the action work. Yeah.
This is not like, especially because Game of Thrones doesn't do one director for every. They change it. So this guy is probably still an assistant for the action stuff. But it implies there's an action scene in the pilot, which makes sense that there would be one. But I doubt it's like I doubt it's a battle, but it could be. It could be. It might be a smaller scale. That's the other thing. A lot of these movies I just listed off don't have like armies facing armies. I mean, some of them do, like Starship Troopers did. Planet of the Apes sort of did, I guess. But like Patriot Games had small battles. Like those were armies, but they were small armies. They were like 100 versus 100, and X-Files is people with superpowers fighting, you know, or not X-Files, sorry, X-Men. But so I meant to say Fantastic Four there because there was no X-Men, it was X-Files. But X-Files is a good example. Like X-Files didn't film battles at all.
Yeah.
That's one of the few that I threw that one in there because it's a different kind of action mood kind of thing. They may have like a few minutes of like some strange monster. But Mulder and Scully don't fight the monsters in
They had like
X-Files.
some alien spacecraft or whatever.
Yes, yeah. So there's, I don't know, that tells us a little something. But I don't want to go too far with that.
You heard it here first, folks. Blood Moon is going to have alien spacecraft.
And the cigarette smoking man. Cigarettes are one of the technologies they lost over time.
Yeah.
So what's funny is this guy's name is Matthew Dunn. Some astute listeners may have recognized that name indirectly because the weapons master for Game of Thrones is Tommy Dunn. But there's no relation here. It's the same spelling, D-U-N-N-E, but they're not related as far as I can tell. However, Matthew Dunn is the son of a stuntman. So it kind of makes sense that a guy who grew up as the son of a stuntman would become a filmer of action scenes because he grew up watching his dad do them.
The Dunns have action in their blood.
Yeah, right? So since we got off on this track, let's continue with it. I'll come back to the rest of the questions a little later. Actually, let's take this one from Geek Furious because it's kind of relevant here. Could a show set 5,000 years in the past have huge time jumps between seasons to maybe skip over slow parts to satisfy less sophisticated viewers? I seriously doubt it because small time jumps of 4, 5, 10 years, yes. We've seen shows do that successfully. Vikings, a very major show that did that multiple times. But huge time jumps, nah, because you got to recast everyone. That's just, I think that the logistics of that are just, I don't think so.
I think it theoretically could be done, but I don't think they're doing it here.
It wouldn't satisfy less sophisticated viewers either.
Because one of the problems is that they don't know who everybody is, and then if you just reset everyone, it's like I got to learn a whole new cast. Yeah, I kind of doubt that. It would be cool, but that's not. I doubt that's feasible for a big production company to do something like that. Okay, so yeah, let's talk a little bit more about some of the production notes and some other stuff that we think we know, and some things we think we don't know. So, since it's a story we think we know, but we don't know, there could be differences in the timeline. This is something we got into in our Age of Heroes episode a year ago, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But for example, there shouldn't be a Winterfell. There shouldn't be a Storm's End. There shouldn't be a Wall. There shouldn't be a King's Road. Definitely shouldn't be a King's Landing. That's only 300 years old. We're talking about thousands of years ago. There shouldn't be Sunspear. There shouldn't be the Eyrie. There shouldn't be White Harbor. There shouldn't be Gulltown. There shouldn't be almost anything. There should be maybe Highgarden. There should maybe be Casterly Rock. There should probably be Old Town. There should probably be the Seastone Chair.
But it'll be so cool. I mean, like, it's not like we saw a ton of Old Town, but Old Town's going to be like real different.
Older Town.
Older Town,
Super
yes.
Old Town. And Westeros and Essos, for you guys who are watching, this is one. This is connected. That's huge because it also changes the whole shape of trade routes. You can't sail from here to here. This is one solid continent. This would be like the equivalent of the Suez Canal being built that allows people to go through this now, and trade opens up. All this stuff changes. So like the geography is massively different. For all we know, the seasons are normal too. That's another one. It's like, we take that for granted because every single person in the story of Game of Thrones proper has grown up with seasons being like that, and they don't really know anything different. That's normal for them. But their normal might be, quote unquote, seasons more like Earth. Mm-hmm. And that by itself changes a lot of things. Just that, changes how society works when you don't have to worry about winter going 6 or 7 years. But they're going to deal with the thing that made it that way in the first place, apparently. The reason that we now have 7-8 year winters is going to be dealt with. What are some other things? Did anything, when we were preparing this episode, were some things that unresolved mysteries from Game of Thrones that you think that you would like to see, that you think are feasible here?
I want to know more about the Lord of Light.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
okay.
maybe most intrigued by.
Yeah.
Some history to where the religions originated.
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, and of course, with the old gods, that's a religion. We talked about the skin changers already. Okay, and that's a great segue to Naomi Watts. Naomi Watts' character is described as a socialite with a dark secret.
Charismatic socialite.
Yes, you're right. Charismatic. That part seems to be kind of apparent just by looking at her and seeing her acting.
She'll be more like Marjorie than Cersei.
Yeah. Yes. So. A few things about Naomi Watts. A lot of you are familiar with her already, but she's an Oscar-nominated actress. I'm floored that she's 51 years old, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, wow. She was in Twin Peaks, the new version of Twin Peaks, which she won a lot of acclaim for that. She was in Gypsy, The Ring 2, I Heart Huckabees, 21 Grams, Strange Planet. She did voices for Babe, Pig in the City. So very broad skill set. She's beautiful. She's charismatic. She's a great actress. She has voices.
I'm drawing a blank, but what was the David Lynch movie that she did? Is what I kind of think of knowing her for.
That's not Twin Peaks?
No,
that was a
no.
show. You're right. Yeah, my bad.
It's killing me. It's a I don't know, for like art house, movie nerds. It's a great movie.
It's Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you. God, I
Mulholland
just cannot
Drive.
think of the name of it. Yeah.
Cool. It's another big one. So she's been in so she is probably the biggest star. Maybe Miranda Richardson's a bigger star. Not important to rate them like that, but the reason I bring it up is because we talked about.
No, Aziz, you need to give me a ranking, like 10 points. Firstly, on ears.
So is she?
How is her left ear? And
Her
how
left
is her
ear
right
is better
ear?
than her right ear. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, is she a
close.
does it make her like a perfect 16? Okay.
So this is touching back on what we said about Sean Bean before. Is she a traditional lead where she's like a main character or the main character? Or is this a setup where she's just going to die at the end of the season? We're like, oh, it was another one of these type of characters. Or some combo of the above. Is there lots of leads? She's just one of them. She's just one of the first ones we get introduced to, like Daenerys or Jon or Ned.
We did get a comment here from anime lover Nicole, who asks, what do you guys think? Could Lan the Clever be a woman? And could that be whom Naomi Watts is playing? And I have to say, when I immediately saw her name, I was like, oh, that's what I wanted so bad. And we talked about it. I really don't think it's the case. I think it's just wishful thinking.
Well, here's the thing. I agree with you, and I think that you're right that she's not a Lannister. I don't think she's a Lannister.
Yeah, I don't think she's a Lannister, and I don't.
Or
what
of
she
that
said.
family, or a Casterly, or whatever.
Yeah,
but
the
I don't
point
think
is that she's not either. The point is that she is a mystery woman, sort of thing, like a charming socialite who winkles Casterly Rock from the Casterlys and is Lan the Clever, essentially, in the history books.
Well, no, I get that. I'm just saying that doesn't explain the Dark Secret. The Dark Secret to me is, I'm guessing, is something mystical. Like maybe she's a skin changer.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. Is I think that sort of thing. I think the argument people make her dark secret is that she's trying to steal this castle.
Yeah, that doesn't really sound like a dark secret. Yeah, that's just
No.
So I think that there's we could separate these two ideas.
Like having a unscrupulous plan is different from knowing a piece of information that is scary or whatever.
Right, and maybe that, but of course, the way it gets from the truth to the media spin or the way it's presented to us could be inaccurate. But assuming it's accurate, then that's what
it still would be awesome, even if she is not. If some other woman was Lan the Clever, I would still think that's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, that's one of the things we brought up in our Age of Heroes live stream a year ago. Lan's sister. The idea of Lannister is a shortened word of Lan's sister, and that could work really well. Lan the Clever, no man's Lan. We led that hashtag charge a while back, so we're certainly on board for that. But I just don't think it's Naomi Watts. That would have to be a different character, I think. However, it's still possible for sure. And Sam, our friend Sam from Watchers on the Wall, got to interview her a little bit, and Naomi said she's intimidated because the show is so successful, but she's confident that fans will like it. She thinks that they're bringing a lot of great things to the table. Of course, she'll say something like that. She's not gonna be like, actually, I don't have a good feeling about this. This isn't going well. But still, it's cool. It does seem like a kind of an honest thing to say.
Edit that out later.
It feels authentic to be intimidated by this. So that's interesting, but I definitely, the Dark Secret thing definitely pushes me towards thinking skin changing or some sort of magical secret. But it could be something else. We could be so far off the scent. It's something we couldn't even conceive of.
I figured out her dark secret. She's not naturally blonde.
That is a dark secret. Yes. Aha. Ba-doom. So Miranda Richardson, another major actress here. She's also Oscar nominated. She's most famous as Rita Skeeter from Harry Potter. She's also been in a lot of comedic roles. Absolutely fabulous. It's a huge, successful British show that ran for a long time, and she was in it. She was also in a Blackadder quite a bit.
Was she absolutely fabulous in it too? I think so.
I assume so.
Fab.
If you go to her IMDb, it's really, really long. She's been acting since she was young, and she is not young now, so that's a long list. And yeah, like Ashaya said, you know, having famous people can be a mixed bag, but we'll have to see with no idea what role she's in. You know, she could be some sort of matriarch figure. She could be some sort of like Cirrus. She could be. It's impossible to guess. You can only kind of eliminate a few possibilities. Like she's probably not some big, hairy mace wielding warrior.
I doubt she lives in the Summer Isles.
Yeah, yep. Pretty safe guess there too. Yep. Toby Regbo is another name that we took note of. He's known for Treasure Island and Rain, but around here, we know him as Ethelred from The Last Kingdom, where he was not a good character. I mean, good character, but, you know, a dislikable character. Like
You love to hate him.
You love to hate him. He wasn't as bad as Joffrey. He's a little more adult. But he reminded me a little bit of Joffrey.
Meanwhile, on my end, I know his face very well because people love to fan cast him and use him in edits and stuff like that for a Song of Ice and Fire characters.
He's a handsome dude.
Yeah,
That's
whatever.
True.
I will see. We were talking about it, and we're both really hoping that he plays a similar character to Ethelred. That he's just the kind of character you want to hate.
And you know what? There's a lot of room for characters like this. So of course, there's going to be some dudes that we love to hate or women we love to hate. That seems likely because it's a big cast, it's Game of Thrones style, but also this is supposedly the Long Night was led into by a decline in civilization. Like civilization is declining and it kind of leads to this dark age. And so you could expect a lot of crappy rulers to be around. Like you're not going to have a bunch of great rulers at Golden Age that just boom, dark age just suddenly happens. So you got to have that. Some of that decline is going to already be in place, like heirs that are clearly not going to rule well, and people who feel really entitled, people who don't, have no honor, all that stuff. And these are all told to us about things that happened in the great empire of the Dawn that existed 10,000 years ago or so. It was a great society that collapsed, and it had some of these elements where it had great civilization that was on the decline. There's whispers of that. The history kind of tells us that. So that fits pretty well. A lot to look forward to there.
That, by the way, is something that perplexes me a little bit. It seems like what I've read is this is the story of that decline. But that, to me, seems like a difficult show to end. Like, how are we going to feel when the show is over? I feel like the rise out of the decline is the story that would end well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel you. I mean, I feel like they could. Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those things where, like, okay, how long is the long night then?
Yeah,
that people are gonna complain about. But we did get a question from Shot that I put in the Q&A area where they were like, "Is the series going to end with the Hammer of the Waters?" Which is a fun thing to think about. How will it end?
The Hammer of the Waters was the flooding of the neck. When the neck became a marshland, it wasn't a marshland. That's what Moat Cailin was like, partially submerged and all that.
Or maybe the breaking of the Arm of Dorne.
Breaking the Arm of Dorne here, which is there's legends tell us that the Children of the Forest were responsible for that. They were trying to stop the flood of humanity into this continent, and this was how they did. At first, they did this to break the land bridge, and then they did this to make it more inhospitable. Supposedly, we don't know if that's true, but.
It would be interesting.
It's a compelling story if it is.
It would really tell us something about Children of the Forest is how many children and young people, like young-looking short people, they were to cast.
Oh, good point.
That would be very telling.
That would be. And right now we have almost nothing in that regard. Yeah. However, good timing for that. The next two actors on the list here are Georgie Henley and Dixie Edgerix. And Georgie Henley is Lucy from The Chronicles of Narnia. So she's... a child actor who's, not a child anymore. I guess she's probably 15-ish.
Yeah, I don't know how old. I mean, I don't know how old she is and how tall she is, but she sure looks young.
Yeah, she could be a child of the forest. And of course, in Game of Thrones, all the children of the forest were female. Now, that's almost certainly not going to be the case in this show.
I can tell you now. She is 23 years old.
Oh, she's way older than I thought.
And she's 5'4".
All right.
Anyway,
that's about the same height as Tom Cruise. Dixie Edgerix is also British. She's 14, so she is younger. And the photos of her, she just looks kind of wistful and sad. Like she's been in a horror film called The Watcher in the Woods with Angelica Houston, and just like her IMDb photos, she's not smiling, which is unusual.
How can she not look wistful and sad? Her name's Dixie. Dixie Edgerix.
And so that's interesting, and I wonder about that. It doesn't really seem like she would be a child of the forest, but that could work. That could definitely work. We also have Marquise Rodriguez, who is young Raymond Santana in When They See Us, which has been getting all kinds of critical acclaim. He was also in Luke Cage, 1 episode and 5 episodes of Iron Fist. I'm not really sure what role he had in there. Like, I don't know those shows very well, but he may have done some fighting. Those are both action shows. So maybe he did. Maybe he had some action roles there. So maybe he's going to do be a warrior type. Who knows? He is also a person of color, which of course doesn't tell us a lot, but it means that we're getting other locations. Probably, like we said, we talked about that already. I don't need to go back to that, but it touches on that again. Jamie Campbell Bower, we talked on briefly. That's he plays young Grindelwald. He plays Caius in Twilight Breaking Dawn. He is a handsome guy, handsome kid. He is actually a distant descendant of British nobility himself. He was Sweeney Todd, or in Sweeney Todd with Johnny Depp. He was King Arthur in the Camelot TV show. So he is probably some handsome, noble character. Seems likely. We have Denise Gao, lots of acting roles, but mostly she's done voice acting, which is interesting. So maybe she's doing some sort of character that isn't the actor, like a Darth Vader type situation where you have James Earl Jones doing the voice,
costume CGI or something.
So it's just a guess, but she's done voices for Dragon Quest, Mass Effect Andromeda, The Witcher 3, Star Wars Battlefront, so a lot of battle type games and stuff like that. We also have Sheila Atim, who is a British person of color actress and composer. She's won the Member of the Order of the British Empire for her services to drama. That's pretty cool. But she doesn't have a lot of credits. She's pretty new. She seems super talented, but she doesn't have a lot of credits. Twelfth Night and Harlots as Limehouse Nell.
I love Harlots, by the way.
Oh, you know that show?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's really good. I like.
Of course, she says.
I like historical dramas when they're like led by women and not all about war, and that's what Harlots is.
Cool.
And it's also got a lot of gay characters in it.
Nice. I just didn't know anything about it. I don't know. Yeah, that's all.
it is a Hulu show and a web series that releases week to week. So that's fun. Nice.
Then there's John Sim, whose name came up briefly before. He's got a huge list of roles. He's a veteran. He's been around since 1992, mostly TV. He did Collateral and Doctor Who. He was the character called The Master in Doctor Who, and he was David Mars in Collateral. And by the way, he is the first of several actors we're going to read here that were in the show Collateral. That's a British show that I'm not super familiar with, but apparently...
It's a show?
Yeah, it's a TV show.
Okay.
Yeah, not a movie.
Yeah, not the movie Collateral, a British TV show
It's
called
both.
Collateral that has Carey Mulligan in it.
Okay.
Right. We have Alex Sharp, who was a really interesting story. He was another British actor, but didn't get famous in England. He was rejected by all the major UK stage schools, only to be accepted at Juilliard, of all places, which is a really prestigious school in New York. And he won a Tony Award on Broadway. I just want to say I love Alex Sharp in How to Talk to Girls at Parties.
Yeah.
That movie, it cracks me up. I love the concept of it. I thought he was particularly good in it. I like this guy a lot. I'm excited to see what kind of character he plays.
Clearly, Ashay should be leading this part of the discussion. She knows all these actors, and I just looked them up. I had never heard of any of them.
I thought you
She's
saw
I know that
some
one.
of How
I know
to
that
Talk
one.
to Girls at Parties. I watched it a few times here. I've watched it multiple times. I liked it a lot.
Cool.
He seems like a character out of a Judd Apatow movie. That's how
He does. He just got this this look to him for sure.
So next one is Josh Whitehouse, who that last name sounds very Game of Thronesy. He's been in Paul Dark as Hugh Armitage and The Night Before Christmas, which is a name I love because it's a pun. It's the night as in a knight in shining armor, the night before Christmas. But we don't know a whole lot about him. He's a bit of a newer actor. John Heffernan is in his late 30s. He's a British actor, also in Collateral as Sam Spence, and he was Lascelles in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and he was in Dracula. So he's got a smiley face. So I wonder what kind of character he'll be. Naomi Ackie is. I'm not sure of her nationality, but she's a person of color, and she's been active for only about 4 years, but she's already getting major roles.
Yeah, she's
in
British
The Rise of
actress,
Skywalker.
too. Yeah,
That's
she's
a huge one.
Yeah, she's Janna in The Rise of Skywalker, and if you keep up with the Vanity Fair cover shoots and photo shoots, we saw her character. She looks so badass. I love her already. But I also know her from the show The Bisexual, which is also on Hulu. It was released in the UK first, I believe.
Nice.
But in that show is by Desiree Akvan, who did the movie Appropriate Behavior. And
Oh, cool.
obviously it's about a character who's bisexual, but the character Naomi Ackie plays is this gay character works in an art gallery. Anyways,
That movie was called Inappropriate Behavior.
no, it's
Just
appropriate.
appropriate. I think I mixed
Sean
that
saw
up,
it
but yeah.
too, yeah.
I remember that movie stuck with me. It was really good.
The TV show's good too, and
Oh.
yeah, she's in most of the episodes. Naomi Ackie is.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. She was very her character was very good at being standoffish and kind of rude. It's just for context, I know she can play many things, but that she was playing a very distinct kind of character.
Nice. Okay. Next up, we have Ivano Jeremiah, who all three of us have seen this character.
I think we all love him.
We do
Yeah,
all love him.
yeah.
He's in the show Humans as the character Max. Max is the show Humans is about AI beings existing, being made by humans, and then how that all goes, the conflict that creates.
It's a perfect complement to Westworld if you watch Westworld, because they're very different and very it's perfect. Just watch it.
It's really good. And he plays a uber pacifist. I mean, this guy is
he's my favorite character.
Jesus level pacifism. He is super nice and
He's
just
so
warm.
sweet.
Multiple times, everyone's like, "What? We got to go get revenge," and he's like, "Maybe we should think about this."
So you can't help but love this character, but he's a highly trained stage and TV actor, and there's no reason to assume he's going to be a warm, friendly character. He's a big man. He's 6'2". His head was shaved in Humans, and he's a dark-skinned black guy. With big eyes. So he could be very intimidating if he wanted to be.
Yeah, very distinct look.
And I noted from his IMDb page that he's extensive training in combat, which, hey, this is Game of Thrones type of show. Tall, intimidating dude with combat training. We can't go too far in predicting roles.
Cast
but,
for a reason.
This guy, I would bet this guy's going to have a fight scene. And I'm looking forward to that. He's also been in Black Mirror and The Hollow Crown. He's done lots of voice work. So very broad skill set this dude has. So exciting. And last but not least for actors, sorry if y'all are getting a little tired of going through all these actors, most of whom you haven't heard of, but only one more. Richard McCabe, veteran British actor. He's almost 60 years old. He was also in Collateral as Peter Westbourne. He was also in Paul Dark. We mentioned that show. Also, Mr. Trencom, and he played Winston Churchill in the show Peaky Blinders. He was also in Master and Commander, the movie, as Mr. Higgins, the surgeon's mate. So this guy, as an older actor, he's more likely to be some sort of lord or, powerful guy, but maybe not. He could be, you never know, like a religious guy. Or who knows? Shopkeeper. Yeah, you never know. We can't go too far with these guesses. One other person I want to mention here is Emma Denby. She's relevant because she's the construction modeler, which at this stage is really important because they're building sets, and the sets tell us a lot about what we can expect. And she did all of season 8 for Game of Thrones construction modeling, which means the Wall, which means King's Landing, the expanded Winterfell. So some really big, important things that were awesome, even though the writing behind them wasn't great. I don't want to hear anyone complain about the work that these construction modelers did, because they were, especially if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, man, that stuff is high tech, skilled, clever. These people really good at what they're doing, and you can't blame them for other stuff. So they don't decide what happens; they just make it. So she's done King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. She's done Alice Through the Looking Glass. She's done Spider-Man Far From Home, or is doing Spider-Man Far From Home. That's being filmed. Aladdin and Annihilation. So a lot of really big, important movies while doing Game of Thrones season 8.
Annihilation is not only a good movie, but definitely when I think about the setting and the backdrop, the visuals of the movie was impressive too.
Very unusual and unique. Yeah. So yeah, very
diverse. All kinds of different stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have a costume designer. I said there was only one more, but I lied. There's one more. Imogene Shays, who did costumes for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Meg, Bite Me, True Blood, American Horror Story, and Glee. She is also doing costumes for Blood Moon. But let's talk about what the sets tell us. I want to talk. We've talked off and on about the Children of the Forest in this episode, and that seems... It was a very solid guess to expect children to be part of this show, but now it's even more solid. And the reason is a couple of production notes. One thing is that we've heard that they're filming in the, what's it called? Where are my notes here? The Marble Arch Caves in northern in Ireland, which is cool. We already mentioned Belfast is confirmed, and other locations are not unlikely, but we don't have confirmation on them yet.
And we saw drawings by the Children of the Forest in the caves in Dragonstone.
Yeah.
So
that's very exciting. And we got via Watchers on the Wall. So shout out again to Watchers on the Wall. This is Vanessa Cole did an article. And there was a Twitter user named A_red_priestess who got some photos back in May of one of the sets being constructed, and it looks to be a cave system. So we both have this artificial cave system and these marble arch caves, which is a real cave system. That just screams Children of the Forest. Caves, children are like, there's not even another good theory out there for what this is. I mean, there are other possibilities for sure. Going back farther in time, you might have humans living in caves, but if we have socialites, we probably don't have a whole lot of humans living in caves here. You know what I mean? It does sound like a fallen civilization rather than just a sparse prehistoric kind of society. It seems like a pretty major society with connections to other societies that collapses rather than a Bronze Age proto civilization situation. So maybe it's a merging of the two ideas. And with multiple locations, we can have both. Yeah. But so the caves, like, this is something you haven't gotten to in the books yet, but it's something that's really important and you got to see in the show. What did you see when Bran went into that cave?
Oh, I was thinking more about the cave with Iger and John in it.
Oh, well, there's that too. But when Bran went into the cave, the Three-Eyed Raven's cave, like, there were bones and dark. It's a creepy place, right? That's not oh, he's found shelter. It's a happy end of the destination. So, like, talk to us for a minute about like what that, like that whole feeling about that cave and what that speaks to you, and how we, any ideas you might have on what, how they could present this in a different light or in a similar light.
Yeah, well, one of my thoughts is just the nature of filming in caves. It's got to be a little awkward.
That's a good point. I thought about that. Yeah.
Depending on how narrow or tall the walls are, how much of a civilization is in there versus just a family hiding out. I feel like it'll be hard to present too much inside caves.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
It's just going to be a little too visually narrow. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, and it'll be very elaborate, and lots of stuff will be set in there. But I'm kind of suspicious about the extent of filming inside of caves.
Okay. Let me throw something else at you here. Get your reaction to this. It's been suggested that the others were created by a faction of the children rather than that all the children were like, yeah, let's do this. It doesn't necessarily make sense the entire race would be
humans
united.
Didn't make nuclear weapons.
Right. A few humans did. Yeah. So in Game of Thrones proper, there's not that many children. You don't have an opportunity for differing takes. But in this setting, you might have different factions, maybe even different like sub races. There's some lore that says that way up here, there's these forests of the people of the Evekevron who...
I say Ithakevron.
Ithakevron. I don't know how to say that. Who knows how to pronounce that word? I just
say how I say it. We can say it all our ways, but I've never really heard you say it, maybe.
But the idea is that they're described, ancient legend describes them as being kind of like the Children of the Forest. And if there's this land bridge, then they may be cousins of the children or ancient descendants, and they would have, 10,000 years of growing apart, would there be some differences. So we can hope for a great expansion of this culture of the Children of the Forest, where they don't just have this monolithic view of humanity, where some of them are like, let's kill the humans, or some of them are like, no, let's work with them. We might have fantasy races in conflict, kind of like we see in some of the Marvel movies have done that pretty well. The
dwarves and elves didn't necessarily get along Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. So we have maybe the potential for different races trying to get along in a way that's goes farther than the kind of problems that happen in the real world, where human races are very small biological differences and they still have trouble getting along, whereas these are massive biological differences. they're not even but apparently they can breed with each other, though. There's an old theory that the Kranich men are a combination of Children of the Forest and human, because they're so small, they're so close to nature, but it doesn't have, that's just a theory. But that's something they could get into here as well.
I think that the tales of the Ibonese people mating with humans are interesting examples of that too.
I love that you brought up Ib, because that's a culture that probably existed this far back.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to show Ib, though. They're not such a visually appealing people, and they're really far out and north. I don't know.
Yeah, they're sort of Neanderthalish.
Yeah,
sort of,
I don't
in
think
that they're
that
like a different human species, kind of.
I tell you, this is kind of connected to all this stuff we're saying, but what I sort of expect from a big picture perspective of the story that will be presented is this conflict of cultures of, we'll say,
remember the heart trees and the like.
Yeah, I'm going to say that
there.
the children of the forest, the races that exist here already, are going to be maybe more like indigenous Americans.
Yes.
Right? They're going to be living off the land, living in caves, minimal ambition, minimal excavation of resources.
Yeah.
And humans are going to show up and chop down trees and build castles, and you're like, that's not your land. You can't do that with that land, and that'll be, I kind of expect, the central conflict of what's happening. Now, I don't know how quick they can give us the background of these cultures to enter this conflict. And it doesn't mean there can't already be conflicts. It's not like all the Native Americans were all getting along peacefully when the Europeans showed up in the first place. They had their own wars.
Very different cultures.
Exactly.
They weren't all just Indians. Yeah.
And all the Europeans that showed up had differences in cultures and stuff too.
Less so in that the ones who were showing up were kind of all single-minded about conquering. But back home, yes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And especially as time went on, because some of them were less concerned about conquering and just getting religious independence or whatever.
Or getting wealthy.
Now that someone else already conquered the land for them,
It's different, different game, yeah. So that's a lot of fertile ground there for varieties of cultures and culture clashes. And here's a related question from Richard Seymour. What institutions were around 5,000 years ago? Because institutions can impact like these cultural connections and sometimes bridge gaps, sometimes make the gaps larger. He asked Maesters, Church of the Seven, Pyromancers, what else? Okay, let's go through those specific examples and then throw out a few more. Maesters, yes. Supposedly,
really?
Yes, which is kind of a surprise because they didn't even have writing. Or did they? And it was later lost.
Which is where we get into, you saw that we mentioned Old Town.
Yeah.
That it would still exist.
Supposedly, learned men had been gathering there for thousands of years, even prior to it being called the Citadel. It's not really known when they started calling it the Citadel, but the fact that learned people were gathering there made sense.
The Citadel reference was originally more of the fact that it was a fortress type area.
Yeah.
I like the idea. I hope that there is writing, but it's revered. People who can read are like magical, yeah.
That'd be kind of cool, yeah. So Church of the Seven? No. There's no Church of the Seven. Even in Andalos, I don't think it existed yet. They may decide to play with that and have it exist, but it shouldn't exist.
They only had 6
given book time.
Church of the Six.
Given book canon, it shouldn't exist. The Pyromancers quite possibly did exist. They're a really ancient guild, but we don't know how ancient, but pretty darn ancient.
You're at least 7 years old.
There could be other institutions outside of Westeros, a culture that, because of the presence of several POC actors and actresses, we guess that the Summer Islands could be part of it, but another guess is the Royn. The Roynar were very advanced culture, a person of color culture, so that would fit really well, that were sort of like the ancient Egyptians. I've liked to say, because we did a series on, well, it's not finished yet. 2 out of 3 episodes are done on Nymeria, and they're the Roynar. And the more I studied the Roynar, the more I was like, man, if you were to pick any time and place to live in the entire history of Planetos, you would pick the Royn. You would want to live among the Roynar before the Valyrians came along and before the Long Night.
I said Roynar, Sarnor.
Sarnor would be good too.
They're very similar cultures to me, and Sarnor's even farther back, but they have like the great library and
true.
Very similar, like fantastical, like just party cities.
Yeah.
Did they have air conditioning?
No,
Well,
but the Roynar live along the sea and the river. Like for example, in Sarnor, there's Salosh by the Silver Shore, which has these great libraries that were burned, a la the library of Alexandria. But I would live during a period of peace for both.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't pick during the Dothraki invasions, yeah. And so other examples. There wouldn't be the Faceless Men. There wouldn't be the Iron Bank. There wouldn't be Valyria. Those aren't exactly institutions. Some of those are, but
we got an interesting comment that people brought up they were generally wondering about werewoods and whether we would see if werewoods extended further out or
They
what
should.
happened there.
They should be werewolves all over Westeros.
And well, not just Westeros, but people were wondering about how far it extended into Essos,
Because
if they
of
were
the-
connected.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And with
Because of the land
that,
bridge. Great question.
people like Shot were saying, you were bringing up the shade of the evening trees that they make shade of the evening from, and obviously that's black bark with blue leaves versus white bark and red leaves. We've talked about this extensively in our werewood episodes and other episodes, but it's interesting. It's worth mentioning, I suppose. I don't think we have an answer, and I don't really think the show's going to get into that. But maybe they will get into the corrupting nature of everything, because we talk about, like, the description talks about how it gets dark.
There's a theory that the shade of the evening tree is were corrupted werewolves from long ago.
Oh,
They're so far to the east that that's a part of it that's a stretch, because Daenerys did that in the House of the Undying, which was
But if they were connected at one time, yeah,
It's true.
Or if they could import a number of trees and they'd be corrupted.
Plant a tree.
Yeah.
Lemon trees, you can put a lemon tree in Bravos in the Garden of the Wealthy. Why not import a heart tree from Westeros just to be fancy?
By the way, that's another entity, the House of Black and White. How
Yeah,
old
they
are
would. No, they wouldn't have existed because Bravos didn't even exist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bravos was founded during
Valyria was, subjugating people
Yeah,
and
and Valyria didn't
enslaving
even
them.
Valyria didn't even exist then.
Yeah.
But Slavers Bay, the Giscari did. Grazdan the Great is like a Brandon the Builder figure. And Brandon the Bigger Builder comes after the Long Night, or during the Long Night, or maybe straddles the Long Night.
In the midst of.
But Grazdan the Great is the reason he's such a good equivalent character is he is a big part of their founding myths, but also similar to Brandon, his name pops up everywhere. Like Grazdan is the most popular name in Giscari. And just like Brandon isn't the most popular name in Westeros, but it is extremely popular in the North, especially among Starks. And so it feels similar in that regard. So he seems like an Age of Heroes figure, because this is supposed to be the Age of Heroes. And the Long Night was what ends the Age of Heroes. It's like, that's the demarcation line there. So lots of possibilities. So yeah, so most of these, like, there wasn't even knighthood. Without the Faith of the Seven, you don't have knighthood. Without. So it's really neat, right? But you do. So one of the things we looked at was to try to find out which ancient cultures have a long night myth. If they have a long night myth, then they probably existed during the original Long Night, whereas Valyria we're 99% sure the timeline doesn't support them being around then.
Like,
and they don't have
example,
long night myths.
Like, we've got the patrimony of Hirkut.
Yeah, and that does fit, because Hirkun the hero is one of the figures named as doing that. So, does that make your head spin?
Yeah. I tell you one thing I'm thinking about, a minor tangent, but it's possible that some cultures adopted other cultures' myths.
Yeah.
And maybe they weren't part of the
Yeah.
Long Night or didn't have a hero, but they still took on the story or got absorbed into the culture. Like
The first man adopted the religion of the children eventually.
and the Daniele Bellelli podcast we're listening to about the conquest of Mexico.
Yeah.
About how it seems like maybe after the fact they changed some of the stories to be more Christian.
They changed the
origin.
religion to make it fit retrofit some elements to make it all. Yeah. Like we even see that in Fire and Blood. There was an attempt by the Ironborn to make the drowned god one of the aspects of the seven. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But they tried to kind of merge that a little bit, and it's a historical thing that does happen. You're right. That's a great call.
One of the things I'm wondering, I mean, we were talking about like Azor Ahai type figures. We were mentioning some of them. There isn't any that seems necessarily like it would be likely to be from the Summer Isles, which, if we're wondering how much they're involved in things, that's interesting to me on its own. But some of the other ones that they mentioned, like Yntar and Nefarian, I don't know. I'm doubtful that we'll see up in Nefer and up in that area. But again, if we're talking about like long term, over seasons, you think about Game of Thrones, probably people who hadn't read the books or whatever were just on the first book. I don't think they would have thought about how much it extended and about how much we would see of some of these places. They might want to give us the 5 forts. The 5 forts were supposedly built by the Pearl Emperor to fight some demons coming from the east around the time of the Long Night. Yeah, we've had a lot of people mentioning that in our chat, by the way. I mean, I myself am a big proponent. I don't like to say I'm into theories, but some of this ancient stuff, I do think there's I don't know, some fun things to theorize about. And
Very
I
much.
think there has to be great significance to the Five Forts being another hinge of the world. And
I
We've
agree.
gone on about this in the past already.
It's great because what we're learning about the show very much supports the possibility of a great empire type setting, given socialites and dark ages incoming, and for it to be it's a more epic collapse if it's a fall from higher heights, right? It just they like to go
so
for
high
big.
if they can't even read though.
Yeah,
there's a limit on how big a society they can't read.
It's a good point. Maybe they can read, like maybe writing was lost. They may find a way to explain that. It's unclear, but you make a good point for sure.
I mean, there's variants on like reading, like to the extent that Westeros can now, and being able to communicate in a written way.
Yeah, being able to send a letter is different from writing a novel.
Yes, exactly, things like that. And being able to scratch some marks on a page that signifies this is my name is different than writing a letter.
Yes, that's also very true. Yeah, you're right. From Stephen Stark, by the way, thanks for the recommendation. Beltalowda. Yeah, so any of y'all haven't checked out The Expanse yet, that's what that's a reference to. I highly recommend it. Very excellent book and show. There's 8 books, in fact. From Nymeria Pow. I'm sorry, I showed up late. Did anyone ask if we would find out about the black oily stone? Well, we didn't address that directly in this episode, but Yin should be a thing around this time, possibly. Ashai almost certainly is. Whether the story will go that far east. On one hand, it's really far east. On the other hand...
It's really close to the Summer Isles.
It's really close. Yeah, on the other hand, Game of Thrones didn't really play to the distances the way they maybe quote unquote should have. So if they were willing to play with distance there, then they might be willing to play with distance here as well. So
it makes me wonder if we'll see Nath.
Yeah, right. Nath has. Yep, we gotta wonder about that. And the Toadstone on the.
I would love to see the Toadstone.
The Toadstone would be amazing.
You can see that if you're watching the video. Oh wait, Aziz's microphone barely covers it. The Toadstone. It's on that side.
Oh yeah, it's down here.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right next to me as a blonde. But someone else points out, by the way, of course, the Children of the Forest read and wrote in runes and carved that into rocks. They could teach the humans.
Maybe.
That there could be a period of time where...
I don't think that's what the Children of the Forest did. That was the first men that did those runes.
Oh, you're right, I think.
I don't think the children had their own runes.
Yeah, I guess
because they communicate a different way. I think when
is that right?
You don't develop telepathy. You don't develop writing when you can communicate these other ways. I think it's like
I guess maybe that's true. I was kind of thinking about like the idea of this, like it was the Children of the Forest who did this to the Night King, and then he was using these symbols. So I kind of associated those symbols with the Children of the Forest, like the Children of the Forest. I don't know.
Okay, well, symbols. Yeah, I guess if they're symbols, that's not. I guess that's kind of like hieroglyphs. It's not. It's similar to writing. Yeah. Okay. I was really thinking about like literature. You're right though. If they just, because we know they drew the
we
faces.
do know it does.
They
it
do
does
the faces
say they
arteries.
often sing in their language, the true tongue. So like they sing and like
singing. Yeah.
They sing. So it seems like they have other ways to communicate beyond through werewood networks.
Yeah. That is interesting.
It does. It does say, however, the children had no books, no ink, no parchment, and no written language. So,
but carvings they did have. Okay, so
I don't know.
Carvings can. I doubt they will not give us carvings because it's just such a cool, mysterious thing to do. Be like, whoa, carvings, ancient carvings. So it's so visually awesome to have carvings. So I bet they'll do that. And even if they're not carvings from the children, and we saw that. We saw the carvings, like you said. You brought it up at the beginning of the episode. The Dragon Glass Cave had carvings in it. And we'll probably see. I imagine that circle is we get a nod to that scene in this show if it gets picked up. We still have to throw that disclaimer if it gets picked up. It's still only a pilot at this point.
I'm just picturing like one of the big logos for it just being like the fucking swirl. Like just the mystery. It'll drive so many people crazy. They think about how many videos people release. Like, I cracked it.
I figured it out.
So one person we didn't talk about, we talked about all these actors and actresses. We didn't actually talk about the casting director, which is pretty important because if you have a good casting director, which they had for Game of Thrones, that just really good things happen. In this case, we have Lucinda Sison, who has a long history going back to 1995. She was casting director for The Fifth Element. She also is casting director for Snatch, Ali G Into House, and Kick-Ass. Comes back around again. She was casting director for Troy, which is which is interesting because that was written by one of Dave and Dan, I forget which. Also for Alexander, the first of these that I didn't like. Which it's the one I wanted to like the most because I love Alexander the Great history, but that was not, it wasn't bad because of the casting though.
Yeah, it was not
it was
good.
Just, the casting wasn't great, but the movie just wasn't good in general. But Troy was cast well, and Kick-Ass was cast well, and Ali G Into House was cast well, and Snatch was cast really well. X-Men First Class, Dark Knight. She was the UK caster for The Dark Knight. She did Wonder Woman, and she's doing Wonder Woman 1984. So the sequel, she did Blade Runner 2049, she did Cloud Atlas, she did Edge of Tomorrow, she did V for Vendetta, she did The Mummy, she did Hercules, she did Legend.
Whoa, that's a broad variety.
So you got
over
fantastical
time.
stuff like The Mummy, Hercules, and Legend. Yeah, like you said, it's just any of those stand out to you as like
Sci-fi,
particularly well
comedic,
cast?
yeah.
None of those stand out for me as being something that like launched people's careers.
Fifth Element did a
Okay.
lot for Chris Tucker and Mila Jovovich.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
Anyways,
That's true.
that's what I was thinking about immediately is how good are they at sussing out who's gonna be good in the long haul, who's gonna be trained up well,
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's casting in Snatch was awesome. Like that was a surprise, and the kind of character he was playing
Oh,
was
she
a
cast him
huge
twice
surprise.
then.
Who else?
Troy.
And
Troy. Oh
Troy.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right. He was a fine Achilles, I thought too. I was happy with him as Achilles, and I thought Hector was Eric Bana was a great Hector too. So I'd give
I
her.
thought Blade
from
Runner
this-
was cast very well also, by the way. Didn't necessarily hit the base that Shay is talking about, but I think that...
So this list gives me confidence. Like,
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser's awesome in The Mummy.
Yeah.
And, the V for Vendetta, what's his face?
Tim Curry and Legend, that's like, who would see that? And once it's done, it's perfect,
Yeah, so, I think this is a very optimistic list here from what she's done. So I like that a lot. Give her some credit. Hopefully it works out well. She's going to have the resources. Presumably the show is well funded. So, well, I think we're getting close to the end here. We still have to do our drawing, our Shire Post drawing. And if there's any other questions we missed or topics we didn't get to, we'll certainly circle back to talk about the show again in 3 to 6 months, whenever more news builds up. Whenever we have enough to do another podcast on, it'll be a perfect live stream topic whenever that comes. And we'll certainly have more ideas, more thinking this through is going to lead to some more conclusions, I think. More kind of like, oh, well, if it's this timeline with this and that, then they have to... Surely y'all out there will give us more ideas as well. It won't just be us. We didn't even talk about the blood betrayal, the thing that caused the Long Night, according to the World of Ice and Fire, which happens in E.T., and it sounds a lot like Euron and Daenerys. So maybe we'll save that for some other time. Some of you all have heard us talk about it already.
Also if that is the thing that causes the Long Night, and we're wondering about how they'll stretch this out for a while, the idea is that those are characters that wouldn't be introduced right away anyways.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Or maybe Naomi Watts is playing the version of the Amethyst Empress, who's
God, I'll be so devastated and pissed if E.T. is as white as can be.
Oh yeah, please don't do that.
I
Come
really
on,
hope
y'all.
that isn't the case. But I mean, the Amethyst Emperor. I mean, you could still have like there could be some it's a big city. Like there would be. It wouldn't just all be one race.
You can't call it Yee and have a white person. Yeah.
Yeah, like the culture. Like you just look at like the World of Ice and Fire. It's like abundantly clear.
Yeah,
Every
there's
bit
pictures.
Of it. Yeah,
They look Chinese. So yeah, we know. But we'll see what they do. Obviously, we're not in charge. We just can hope, and that's a lot of reason for optimism. But Game of Thrones wasn't perfect either, so there's certainly some things won't be what we want. But overall, I think it looks pretty darn good. Did I miss any questions?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. So, yes, I'm going to start reading off some thanks. Shay, you want to try and figure out who this winner is while I start reading our thank yous?
Well, I had one question about this. I was thinking I would play our intro outro and mute this, and I can show you this real quick.
Well, I got to read the Patreon credits. We can't.
Well, I was saying I'd play it, the intro outro, as a little intermission.
Okay.
Real quick.
Well,
and mute us.
Okay, we could
before
do
you do
that,
that.
unless Sean, you could talk. You have something you want to talk about?
Well, no, I wanted us to be muted so we could confer silently.
Okay, all right then.
Okay.
Sorry, I was unclear.
I have nothing to say anyway.
Okay, then we have a brief minute while we determine the winner. So y'all sit tight while that
Okay.
is figured out. Hey, okay, we're back. We're here again. So we've got our winner. You got our winner ready?
No.
Oh, you're drawing it
Oh.
right now. Okay. Well, then I will start reading our thanks, and then she will tell us who the winner is. So thank you, first of all, to Ashea for running production and doing all these other tasks like determining the winner. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld, not only for the maps and video intro, but for the new music we've been using via Kevin MacLeod for Valar Rereadus. And also thanks to Joey Townsend and Jesse Kowal for our original theme song. Huge thanks to Watchers on the Wall, Vanessa Cole, Samantha, and the rest of y'all, Sue and David and all you guys, Luca. So many cool people helping out cover the show. And we definitely do our own research, but a lot of this stuff is easier for us because they've already done so much work. So definitely give them lots of love and go to Watchers on the Wall for more news.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Sure. We didn't get very many submissions, which is fine, but you should have submitted if you wanted to win this. I don't know what you're doing. You really had really good chances. Very few. So I randomized it, and our winner was number 5, who is L.A. Young, which is Misty 306.
All right.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, she will respond to the email, and we'll send her the information to cash in that gift. So congratulations, Misty. You are now the proud owner of a $100 gift card to Shire Post Mint.
Real quick, what information?
I would say don't spend it all in one place, but you kind of have to.
What information do we need from her? Just
We'll email her and get that later. We don't need to worry about that now. So anyway, let's see. I have other thanks to give. Let's do some Patreon credits and say goodbye. We'll hopefully see some of y'all at Valar Rereadus on Sunday, and maybe some more of y'all at on the live stream on Tuesday, as well as Con of Thrones.
Real quick, I just want to point out I'm watching a show called Dragon Prince. It's really good. It's
Okay,
really good.
I think a lot of my listeners have talked
my
about it, too.
Avatar shirt, my Avatar Cowboy Bebop crossover shirt today in honor of how good Dragon Prince has impressed me. Yeah.
Someone
It's the same
commented
maker.
on your shirt, by the way, at the beginning
Oh,
of the
cool.
episode. They were like, "What is Sean's shirt? Is it Avatar?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's Avatar, but it's mashed up with something." And then, like, as I was typing that, they were like, "No, wait, it's Cowboy Bebop." And I
Yeah.
was like, "No, it's
It's
both."
both. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to the mysterious BR, Hand of the King. Thanks to Lord Stephen Stark, titles. Hand of Queen Ashea, known as the best. Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog is Warden of the West, and my co-panelist for Death of the Other, that's his brainchild. I'm looking forward to doing that with him. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning is Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Cabeth the Unfrozen, Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington, Lady of the Ville Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones and Narrow Sea, Commander of the Royal Fleet, consisting of the Narrow Fleet led by flagship Caraxes and the Bloodstone Fleet led by flagship Prince Daemon. He yearns for the days of when the Stepstones were whole, because that would have been an easier sea to control. This huge sea that connects everything together. It's just such a headache for one pirate lord to control. King Beyond the Wall, Sidney Jesse is the Fallborn, Lord of Bluespring and the Haunted Forest, wields a dagger of Dragonglass and the Valyrian steel blade Redfrost. He, too, yearns for these older days where werewoods were everywhere and worship of the old gods was more prevalent. If he had it his way, things would go back to that. First Walker Tanneman is wielder of Blue Sister. He went north of the wall in search of the most refreshing brew, where the mountains are always blue. Turned White Walker, but still in search for the elusive Blue Mountains. Can't rest until he completes his quest. Our small council includes Lord Daniel, the sneaky Russian Master of Ships, Grand Maester Via James, Lord Benjen of House Hornwood, Master of Laws, Lord Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield, is Master of Coin, Lord Johann of House Orcos is called Shadowhawk, Master of Whispers. Lady Direliz of Castle Naki is the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort, most delicious lord. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian Ranger of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood, dual wielder of Valyrian Short Swords Glorious Morning and Little Light Wise, and sharpshooter of the Werewood and Ironwood Laminated Longbow Todd Von Oben. When you fear things cannot get worse, Snugglebunny enters the fray. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Iron Werewood. Listen for the silence. Lady Lyanna Kelly of Wolf Island is Protectors of Steelhold. Casey Stark is of House Acres. Lady Kay of House Archer is Lady of Earthdog Hall, Huntress of the Wolfswood, and Guardian of Maddie Squirrel's Bane, the Mighty Direweenie. Lady Raywin of House Dillsdane is the Star Spear. Peter Rivers is the Pale Dragon and heir to Bloodraven, and Sir Matthew is of the House Begonias. Our first sword is Jeff Gnarly Longsnapper. Oh, I read his name twice. All right, good for you. You get twice. King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate.
And the Queen's High Council has Bloody Ben Blackwood, Master of Whispers, Rebea Star Eyes, Lady of Waves, and Mistress of Ships, Captain of the Iron Shadowcat. In the shadows we bear our claws. Katrin the Wise of House Trondheim, Master of Coin. Grand Maester Elizabeth, middle daughter of Lyanna Mormont, First Lady to forge both the Silver and Valyrian Steel Link. And finally, Laura Boros, the Lady of Infinity, Master of Laws.
Right on. Our King's Guard is led by Lord Commander Miriam R., backed up by Sir Dolorous D., longest tenured White Sword, Sir Dean the White, Knight of the Black Star, Sir Jord of House Pepsi, the Beverage Knight, Gregor Snow called Snow Bear, a bastard of Winterfell.
He's not Sir Marijuana of House Pepsi? that was a news story that went around recently, Dr. Marijuana Pepsi.
Yep, there's a woman named Dr. Marijuana Pepsi who wrote her dissertation on... Unusual names and how academia treats people with unusual names. Her real name is Dr. Marijuana Pepsi. That is a real name.
Well, the doctor part's not of her name. She is now a doctor.
She is now a PhD. And she completed her dissertation on that. And
you can imagine that doctor might actually be someone's real name, but in this case, she's just an actual doctor.
That's why, anyway, Sir Jord, though.
Yeah, so Sir Jord of House Pepsi is the Beverage Knight, yes. Gregor Snow called Snow Bear is the Bastard of Winterfell. Sir Glennon of House Leanne is called Lion Cloak, and Sir Jen Seaworth is Knight of the Southern Snows.
My Queen's Guard is led by Lord Captain Commander Haima Helmont, the Sellsword Sentinel. It has Alexander of House Atreides from the Seat of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Becca the Bard, Songbird of the North. Michonne the Melodious, Star of Old Town. Minds over Masters. Ser Rambo, Knight of House Gannon, First Blood. Sir Leon of House Walker, wielder of the twin Valyrian steel blades, Fire and Ice, and the Werewood Bow Rain, and Amber the Adamant, the Knight of the Mist and Mother of Squids.
All right, my Beard Guard, we have Lord Commander George the Golden, Sir Joshua Oakhart, the White Oak, Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound, Dance the Fervor.
Hi, Rita.
Sir Joff, Warden of the AC, wielder of Triad, the multifaceted beard of platinum, red, and brown. Stay frosty. And Sir Tim Cargoyle, Mad Boy of the Western Desert.
Right on. A couple more names, such as our History of Westeros' Night's Watch, which is led by Lord Commander Benjen Umber, the Silent Giant, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Greatsword Winter's Kiss. First Builder Maegor Snow, a.k.a. Maegor the Cool, the Fire in the Snow. First Steward Sir Jurion of the Torrentine called Pale Wind. And First Ranger Sir Source Delica of House Gramercy. You can get a cool nickname like this, along with other benefits, including bonus episodes, early access to scripted episodes, voting in polls to determine what episode is next, things like that. You can join in by going to patreon.com history of Westeros and selecting the level that fits you best. And that is it for today. Thank you for everyone for showing up. Thank you for the support, financial or otherwise. Liking and subscribing is highly valuable. You would be surprised, perhaps, at how much it helps. And of course, we rely most of all on word of mouth. So if you like our show, please tell your friends. And we'll see you all soon. Until next time, Valar Reread Us.